Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with the Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 246. Thanks so much for joining me. Today's guest, Julie Kane, is here. She'll be with us in about 5 minutes. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry and know you do too. So please do click the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Anything you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. That includes Facebook. We were having trouble logging on to Facebook, and I'm having issues tonight maybe. But we're live on Twitter. We're live on YouTube. If you're watching after the fact on Spotify or iTunes or anywhere else, Amazon Music, if you're listening, please do click the like button, leave reviews. Whatever you can do helps, so please do it. And don't wait, because you'll forget. And I mean, I always think I'm going to do this, and then I forget. Don't wait and forget. Do it right now. Anyway, we're going to start out like we always do with our Poet Respond poem. And we have a wonderful poem this week from a wonderful poet who's been in Poet Respond before. Christine Potter is here with a really interesting story that happened to her, real-life events tied to the news this week. Hey, Christine, how you doing?
Good. I'm good. Yeah, and I'm glad to be good because I didn't get smushed by a car, so that was excellent.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of those experiences where, as you mentioned, I think in the email, it's one of those things where like this is a poem material
Yeah.
because it's a serious situation. So describe what happened and how this poem came to be.
Well, actually, the poem came in a weird way. It came out of another poem. I was writing a memoir piece about Rockland Bakery, which is like a beloved local place where you used to be able to walk in at 3 o'clock in the morning and buy hot bread. And so when the bars emptied out, some of us would do that. And I was thinking about it, and then I wanted Rockland Bakery. And then I really wanted Rockland Bakery raisin pumpernickel bread. So we decided we'd go out and get some because it's still a thing. And it was the middle of the afternoon. My husband and I went out, and we're driving along our sort of wooded street by the reservoir. And about 30 seconds ahead of us was a young man in a bright red car who, I don't know whether we could be kind and say he was avoiding a squirrel and he swerved, or we could be mean and say he was being a kid driving too fast. I don't know.
Hmm.
But he managed to get his car. Well, he hit a light pole and then he went airborne. And by the time we got close enough to him to do anything about it, the car was upside down. And so we parked and I called 911 and my husband went over to deal with him. I'm a bit arthritic, so I'm not the best person to be climbing around a wrecked car. And the kid was okay, amazingly. I mean, he was at first just absolutely deathly still. We thought he was dead.
Hmm.
But then he started moving
Yeah.
and he walked to the ambulance. So, and we looked around online for the police blotter and he was treated and released at Nyack Hospital. He was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, good news for once. Do you want to read the poem and then we'll talk a little bit more about it so
Yeah,
people can see where you went with that?
yeah, yeah. Okay, it's called Close Call. I'm still not sure I really saw the car, shiny red on a day that was a long green nap, go airborne. I saw the utility pole it had hit tremble, testing itself against electric wires that couldn't catch it and fall. But the car was surely on its roof, and beyond it, the reservoir was lovely as that word sound and full of springtime rain. And past that, long suburban lawns, 80 different shades of green, green that owned itself so proudly you'd need a Geiger counter to say how green, crazy, a neon green, Kelly green, green like tomato vines about to blossom and bear fruit. So I called 911. My husband got us parked and ran across the street to the kid in the upside down red car, who we both thought must be dead, and who seemed profoundly still, but moved his hands to put them both over his face. It was raining again by then, tiny drops you couldn't see, and there were wires down on the wet pavement. The cop who helped the kids stand up and walk to the ambulance that arrived told us he heard those wires singing. We'd known they must be live. I'm old, my husband too. The measure of our lives stretches out like a silly accordion. We understand any number of dangers, often read the papers to find out about them. We step carefully in these day-long dusks, this sugary, constant May rain. But I think our country is still a garden. Look, irises snap their purple fingers on creek banks. Somehow, kids flip their cars and live. And somehow, the wires are still singing with news.
Yeah, and that was Christine Potter reading Close Call, this week's poem on Poets Respond. And I just love, there's especially in particular 3 metaphors in that poem that are just so alive, such great metaphors. And it's just great to see you walk the poem through there, come up with lines like those. And then how did you know that it was about more than just that instance itself and about the deeper, broader topic of the news generally? Did you know ahead of time, or did it something that came to you as you were writing the poem?
I knew I had to write a poem, because you go through something like that and you're a poet and you're going to write a poem. And about, I'd say 5 lines in, I thought, oh, wait a minute. I'm writing about the Gaza demonstrations. I'm writing about the upcoming presidential election. You know, it's a car crash. Everybody says it's a train wreck. And then I'm thinking, you know, it was this beautiful. I mean, we have had this really wet spring in the Northeast, so everything is just explosively green. And I was on the phone with 911 and I was just spacing out on how green it was. I mean, the day it happened, and that showed up in the poem. And then I was thinking of American Eden and America as a garden and as sort of this magical place that, you know, there's something special about this country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, lefties can be, you know, patriotic also. And I'm sort of, it all kind of came together.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing about the accordion, I don't know where that came from. My husband is a keyboard player. He's an organist. He's a pipe organist, church musician. But, and he had one when I met him.
Mm-hmm.
But so maybe that's where it came from. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's a great poem, and really neat to see, you know, the sources and how the poem came to be. Thanks for sharing that, Christine. And also, we should say you're going to be the guest, the main guest on the Rattlecast coming up on June 23rd. So looking forward to that too. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being there then. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, I shall be.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Bye. It was Christine Potter once again with Close Call, today's poem of the day. You can find that at rattle.com. Of course, you can subscribe to get our daily poem by email, too, and join 18,000 other people that get that poem every day. So if you don't do that, go to rattle.com/signup and find that. Okay, so we're going to go take a quick break and go to our main guest, Julie Kane. So sit tight, and I'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Julie Kane. I've always loved her poetry. You know, if you watch the Rattlecast, I love form, I love meter and rhyme, and Julie's amazing at that. The great-grandchild of 8 Irish immigrants, Julie Kane studied creative writing at Boston University, where she was one of Sexton's students at the time of her death. She's Professor of English Emeritus at Northwestern State University and winner of the Excellence in Teaching Award, Mildred Hart Bailey Faculty Research Award, and Dr. Jean D'Amato Thomas's Lifetime Achievement Award. During 2002, she was a Fulbright Scholar in Lithuania, teaching at Vilnius Pedagogical University. She won the National Poetry Series, judged by Maxine Kumin, in 2002, and the Donald Justice Poetry Prize, judged by David Mason, in 2009. For 3 years, she served as Louisiana State Poet Laureate. In 2018, she joined the poetry faculty of the Western Colorado University low-residency MFA program. You can find all of her stuff at Julie Kane Poet. That's Julie Kane with a K, poet.com. And here she is, Julie Kane. Hey, Julie, great to see you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's just my pleasure. I really have been a big fan of your work for such a long time. I'm always like begging people to send more formal poetry, and when we get poems, like that, I just always look forward to it. And it's great to see you and have you share these from 3 books we're going to be looking through.
Yeah, thanks. And oh gosh, that praise for you means so much. I can't even tell you. Yeah.
Oh, well, it's definitely true. I loved reading these 3 books. It was so fun that you sent all 3. I get to have copies of them now too, and they're just wonderful. Do you want to start out with a poem from Rhythm and Blues? Or Rhythm and Booze, I should say. There was a slip there.
That's funny because my working title was Louisiana Rhythm and Blues, and a friend said it should be Rhythm and Booze. And
that's great.
And that's how it got its title. Yeah, I'll start with I think this is probably the second villanelle I ever wrote in my life, Kissing the Bartender. The summer we kissed across the bar, I felt 16 at 36. As if you were a movie star I had a crush on from afar. My chest was flat, my legs were sticks, the summer we kissed across the bar. Balancing on the rail was hard. Spilled beer made my elbows stick. You could have been a movie star, backlit, golden, lofting a jar of juice or Bloody Mary mix the summer we kissed across the bar. Over the sink, the limes, as far as you could lean, you leaned. I kissed the movie screen, a movie star. Drinks stayed empty, ashtrays tarred. The customers got mighty pissed the summer we kissed across the bar. Summer went by like a shooting star.
Yeah, so I was Kissing the Bartender, a great poem from Rhythm and Booze, aptly titled book from Julie Kane. That was the one that won the National Poetry Series, selected by Maxine Kumin. And Julie, I was wondering, I wanted to know, have you always written formal poetry? Was that something, I loved your note way back, and I think the first poem we published of yours, or maybe it wasn't the first, but that Dullahan poem. It says how you, when you were a kid, in grade school, you would take the poetry books, or the English books for the year home and read all the poems first. And so I like that little anecdote. But were you always interested in formal poetry, or is that something you came to later?
Oh, it's funny because initially, I didn't really know there was anything else. Growing up, I think there were 2 poetry books in my house growing up, Robert Frost and Edna St. Vincent Millay. So, I kind of thought that's what poetry was. And when I got to college, at Cornell, freshman year, I was writing, formal poems. And I quickly found out, I had some great teachers and fellow students, and quickly found out that was just not, absolutely not in fashion, and just stopped. And then for many years after that, I kind of still really had a love for rhyme. I couldn't help it. I love song lyrics. I love the sounds of poetry. And I started kind of secretly creeping back to form in, I guess, the mid 80s or later 80s, and I wasn't really showing them to anybody. And all of a sudden, I found out that other people were doing this, at the same time there was this thing called new formalism. It's like, when the radio gets invented or something, it's like all of a sudden all these people around the globe start doing the same thing, like, what is it? We're all tuning into something. So then, I kind of, was able to gravitate to a community, of other people who were doing it and start showing people my poems and sending them out, which I hadn't really done before.
Yeah, it's so interesting because almost word for word, I talked to Annie Finch for the winter issue of Rattle last year, and she said almost the exact same thing, that she always loved formal poetry, didn't know there was anything different. Then she ended up in college, and it was almost like, you had to hide, put your formal poems in the closet and hide them for a long time until, what do you think it was that in that era that made people, and I don't even know if it still exists or not. When I was an undergrad, I remember one professor said, "No rhyming in this classroom," and I thought, geez. but mostly it's been all right. And I had some professors too that taught metrical poetry and rhyme. And so I don't know if it's as extreme as it was in that like 80s or so era. Why do you think that was the case? Why do you think that we were so fixated on not having really it's regularity in poetry? It's not just it's the meter and the rhyme and the way that patterns repeat. And there was like this do not allow too much repetition into your poems for some reason became a mantra. Do you have any thoughts as to why that happened?
Part of it, I think, was a lot of the really bad, mid 20th century rhyme poetry, really boring poet. I won't name names, but that was part of it. Part of it, I think Robert Bly says in an essay, is just free verse. Sounds like free beer. It's like America, we're all about freedom. The Tea Party. It's like we don't want these chains of formal verse. And then for a while there, formal verse got and free verse got kind of associated with the culture wars, in the late 80s and early 90s, which was insane because, people writing in form, were extremely diverse, race, gender, political leanings. It was, it was crazy to make that polarity, like it's conservative to write in form and it's, you're liberated if you write in free verse. So I don't know, whatever it was, I love the way things have evolved now, where if you feel like writing, if Natalie Diaz feels like writing a guzzle, she can do it, and like and free verse, for the next 20 poems or whatever. People can dip into it, dip out of it. It's another tool in the poetic toolbox. There's no longer a stigma attached to it.
Yeah, it always reminds me of E.E. Cummings, because I think for the same reason, because people are in workshops, like when poetry becomes this workshop phenomenon, people are submitting poems that look like Grasshopper, and they're so annoying because it's not, the knockoffs of E. Cummings are terrible, but then his poems that are not like that are amazing, and he's completely ignored, and nobody thinks about his poetry much, because of the fact that I think they're just such bad knockoffs from students. And so it's so easy to put it down because you don't want to see the bad versions of it. And for formal metrical poetry, it's that sing-songy kind of rhyme and meter things to fit, which just sort of gets stuck in your ear. And there's a sort of annoyance aspect to bad form when you're not having enough variation within that regularity. So it's similar, and I agree. I think that's the main reason behind it. Although the cultural war aspect is something I hadn't thought much about either, but that definitely applies as well. Let's hear another poem. Let's hear the next one.
Oh, okay. How about maybe the mermaid story? I don't usually read this one. I don't know why I picked it, but it's in two parts. One, we've all heard half of the fairy tale. A mermaid rescued a drowning prince, swam him to shore, then pined away because she missed the weight of him and the heat of his breath against her neck. Nothing at all like the trickle of cool salt water flushed from delicate gills when she kissed the merman back in school. But since there are witches underwater as well as over, within a year she bargained away her tail for legs, and her tongue too, as legs were dear. She married the prince. His body hair tickled like beach grass parched in sun. An eel grew where his legs forked. She couldn't speak this to anyone. 2. Back in the anti-universe, a woman writer with 2 tongues rooted to the floor of her mouth like anemones has just swum so deep with her freak tale, the sea swims and her brain goes black. We'll see if the tongue she bargained for can send a message back.
Yeah, that was a great poem. That was The Mermaid Story by Julie Kane.
Yeah.
And so how do you decide what the form of a poem like this is going to be? I can imagine it's very easy to see that starting point in my, maybe imagination, but starting with that, we've all heard half of the fairy tale, and then that sort of generating the rest of the poem. But at one point, do you know that this is not, for example, going to be a sonnet? How does the shape of the poem, the eventual form, come to be?
Oh, that's a good question, because often, I kind of noodle around and don't know what form it's going to take. I might start, writing in couplets or something, and then all of a sudden, realize that it wants to be a sonnet. But, I definitely think that different forms lend themselves to different, moods, almost like keys in music or something, different possibilities of expression. I don't always, realize that at the outset. Sometimes I'll sit down deliberately to try a form that I haven't tried before. I'm kind of running out of those at this point. Mm-hmm. That's a little different, but sometimes, I have to recast a poem after, filling up a couple sheets of paper and not getting anywhere, and then suddenly it clicks.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any sort of general advice or rules that you follow yourself about the amount of, about the amount of variation you have? Like once you establish a setup for how the meter is going to be and where the rhymes are going to be, do you have any, is it just all by ear, or do you have a sense that there needs to be some, break, some enjambment or some transition or some slant rhyme or something to break up the routine? Is that how do you think about that aspect of it?
I guess by ear, and I do slant rhyme a lot, and I tend to be not so much metrical. I tend to, I think, be more accentual, more number of beats than strict, accentual syllabic, kind of feet. I've been called out for that, a couple of times by
well, say more about that. Who's calling you out?
I won't name any names, but I once got a rejection from a very formal literary magazine early, in my publishing career, that said, "We publish metrical underlined verse." It's like I thought it was. But I don't know. I can kind of hear the rhythms in my head, and they're not strictly da 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 da.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How much? So have you had any sort of formal focus on it? Like, do you diagram sentences and think about? Do you know like the problem with a formal poetry for me is I can't keep track of all the different words for the different feet. Like the trochees and the iams, okay, but then when you get to the spondies and the choriams and do you pay attention to that at all? Do you scan things, or do you just all do it by ear?
Oh, by ear, and almost always iambic. Usually when I'm doing iambic, usually in sonnets. The others, aren't really used that much in English language poetry, and it's really, an attempt to take Greek, Greek metrical units that were totally different and translate them into, the sounds of English. And it really doesn't carry over that well at all, aside from iambic and, trochaic, okay, for more song-like, kinds of verse, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's as a stress-timed language, there's so much regularity in just the way we talk. I mean, you can look through sentences and the way we speak, and they're almost, usually they're iambic sentences, just that we naturally spill out. And so, it makes sense that we gravitate toward that, I think. Let's hear the next poem, The Bottle Factory.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this was a poem written to a prompt, which, I always think that I can't really do it, and then I surprise myself when when I have to do it and get a poem out of it. But this was in Dave Smith's graduate class, and we had to write in blank verse, The Bottle Factory. The summer after high school, 17, I hired on at the Bottle Factory in Nutley, New Jersey to pack the lines spun out by middle-aged Italian women operating silkscreen machines. The work was dumb. Unfold a cardboard carton, place it upright on a stand, insert a spacer, pack a tier of tiny eye drop bottles, roof the bottles with a sheet of cardboard, simple as layering lasagna noodles. Each time a box was full, I'd heave it off the stand, seal the flaps with masking tape, start over. The only real excitement coming from running too low on boxes, wondering whether the boy would bring more before my bottles toppled on the floor. I like to watch the women twirling up blank bottles from the bin and wedging them between two pins, which rolled the bottle surface under the silk screen, telling dirty jokes, scratching themselves under cotton moo-moos, humming along to the theme from Tommy, which came on right before the hourly news because the DJs could interrupt it. They worked so fast, their fingers were a blur. Every so often, a machine broke down and packer and operator had to scrub defective bottles with acetone rags until the maintenance man could fix it. Nodding off to sleep from the acetone, my rubber gloves as eaten through as cheese, I drifted in and out of bottle dreams. The day I turned 18, the legal age to operate equipment in New Jersey, the foreman put me on my own machine, a slower model, off in a corner, the size of a Chevrolet stood on end. And so I turned out Wella Balsam bottles, hair conditioner, brown and orange, and sent them down my own conveyor belt, humming along to the theme from Tommy. I wasn't fast enough to need a packer, and anyway, it wasn't automatic, powered by a foot pedal moving when I moved, a bashful, lummoxy dancing partner. I learned to twirl each bottle for inspection, to scrub a fly speck from a dirty screen with cotton rags wrung out in gasoline. I wanted to be as fast as they were, to break 8,000 at least, like the slowest worker, Dolores, who stamped gold leaf onto April showers talc. All day, I raced my best day's total, or her worst. Of course, I wasn't Italian or middle-aged. I didn't live just outside of Newark, still smoldering from last summer's riots. By Labor Day, I'd be off at college. But I still longed to be good at something physical, not words, but bottles. I can't explain why it seemed important, or why, for years after that, I cruised strange drugstores looking for bottles I'd made when love turned ugly, when words did not behave.
Yeah, that was The Bottle Factory by Julie Kane from her book Rhythm and Blues. Rhythm and Booze. I did it again. So that's 3 poems from that book we've heard so far, Julie. What can you tell us about the way this book came to be? Like, how did the theme emerge? It's something but unusual for the topics that keep coming up in the book. How did you know you had a book of poems?
Oh gosh, this book took a long time. My first book came out in '87, and this one was 2003. There was a pretty good gap between them. And how did it come to be? It took me a while to know how the sections related to each other. Mm-hmm. I had poems about kind of living in New Orleans and being part of that, drinking culture in New Orleans. I had poems about getting sober. I had poems about, moving to Natchitoches, where, my first teaching job was after grad school, and I didn't really understand how they all fit together until it suddenly dawned on me to arrange them by place, by cities and phases of life, which I did. And once I had that kind of organizational principle, then it was easy to see which poems belonged where and what sections needed, new poems written for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hear the next one, Egrets.
Egrets, okay. Yeah. And this is in haiku stanzas, and my wonderful former student Josh Williams, who's been a Rattlecast guest, does not like haikus that are 575. But I'm sorry, Josh. Okay, egrets. You have to love them for the way they make takeoff look improbable, jogging a few steps, then heaving themselves like sacks of nickels into the air. Make them wear mics, and they'd be grunting like McEnroe, lobbing a Wimbledon serve. Then there's the matter of their feet, which don't retract like landing gear, nor tuck up neatly as drumsticks on a dinner bird, but instead hang down like a Deb's size 10s from the hem of her gown. Once launched, they don't so much actively fly as blow like paper napkins, so that seeing white flare in a roadside ditch, you think trash or egret. And chances are it's not the great or snowy type, nearly wiped out by hat plume hunters in the 19th century, but a common cattle egret down from its usual perch on a cow's rump where it stabs bugs. Whoever named them got it right, coming just 1 R short of regret.
Yeah, that's great. That was Egrets, again, from Rhythm and Booze. The last poem we'll look at from this book. But it's interesting to see syllabic poetry like that from, a generally metrical poet. What was it like? What was the drive to write that poem in that form? Counting syllables rather than beats.
Again, I didn't know when I started writing it that that's the form it was going to take, and I think it really surprised me. But since then, the small handful of poems that I've written in haiku stanzas like that, for me, are very very snapshotish. There's something about them where they pay much more attention to the natural world, than my poems, which are often about, relationships or interior scenes. And there's something about, each haiku stanza that's like a little frame, like slides or snapshots to me. And, it just kind of fit. Although that poem, when I sat down to write it, I wanted to write something about just how much I love egrets and how beautiful they are, and how when I moved to Louisiana, I was just swept away by their elegance. And instead, they come across as really clunky. I'm sorry, egrets. I still have to write the other poem.
So is it the focusing on syllables that allows that sort of surprise to come out? Like, were you sort of so distracted counting and setting up the meter that you didn't even realize you were going into egrets in that direction? Was that part of the process?
Yeah, I guess, whatever constraints you put on yourself forces you away from, your kind of, ego-driven thinking, rational thinking every day, the obvious, kind of choice of words or cliched thought. And, it makes you go deeper. It makes, it surprises, makes you surprise yourself, I guess, with what comes out, because it has to fit that ridiculous constraint.
Yeah, I always think about that. Like, especially now with the large language models that are everywhere with the Chat GPT and things, it's like we have this way of sort of speaking but not thinking, like not actually engaging, but regurgitating, reframing, repeating things we've said before, repeating things we've heard before. And you can talk for a long time, like driving a car without paying attention to actually what you're doing, and then you end up where you are, but you haven't actually driven the car. You've like driven on autopilot. And I think so much of what we do in life, you know, in conversations, is that same kind of autopilot. And then what the form does is make you actually think about like your hands on the wheel, and you know, you're focusing on it more, and you're actually driving and, you know, coming to something new for the first time, maybe because you're focused. It's shifting your focus away from that autopilot mode that language so often has.
Exactly. It kind of, you know, rocks you out of the ruts and yeah, makes you right.
So
Makes
do
you
you
do
ever
something.
write without restraint?
Oh yeah. And lately I've been going back to it. You know, I've got some free verse, just pure free verse poems, you know,
Hmm.
no constraints, you know, other than, you know, um, you know, I've got prose poems in books,
Hmm.
but you know, those aren't really free verse either. That's a form.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Do you find
but
it more
no,
difficult to, you know, because I think the assumption is that it's
yes,
harder to write, you know, in a form. Like that's like the average, you know, assumption. Oh, look at these. You have to get the, you know, to get the beats right. You have to get the rhymes right. But I don't know if that's actually the case. So do you find it harder in free verse?
going back to it, I didn't used to find it harder. You know, in my 20s, when that's when I was writing, it wasn't hard. But going back to it from form is hard because there are so many possibilities. Like, you know, every word just opens up, you know, infinite possibilities of the next word or every line. Like, how do you, you know, how do you choose which way to go?
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, let's shift to the next book you're going to share with us, which is Jazz Funeral, which was a recommission, what we call it, republished by Red Hen
Yeah.
Press, but originally from a Storyline Press, and that was the winner of the Donald Justice Prize. So tell us about this book, about how that's different from what we've been reading so far.
Oh, Jazz Funeral is it's all sonnets. Every poem in it is a sonnet. Um, the core of it is a crown of sonnets, a 14 poem corona about the life of a New Orleans character, Robert Borsoni. And the whole book is really informed by Hurricane Katrina, the devastation to New Orleans, and also the death of my father, and some other, you know, things that had happened at the time. It's a much more, I think, kind of tragic book, you know, than my others.
Hmm.
Um, and also, you know, it's unusual in just being in that one form. But also in New Orleans, the jazz funeral ends with a celebration. After the person is deposited at the cemetery, the band starts playing really happy songs and people start dancing in the street, you know, following it. So that's the, you know, the final movement of a jazz funeral, and I hope kind of the ending of my book too, that, you know, it gets away from the heavy matter
Hmm.
that preceded it.
Yeah. Well, let's do Death of a Newsman.
Oh, oh, okay. And can I show you the original cover?
Yeah, please
Because
do.
the reprint, as I told you, is the reprint is being green because Red Hen Press wanted all the storyline books that it, you know, that it very, you know, thankfully has reprinted to be consistent. But the original cover, oh, it was this wonderful,
Oh,
you
that
know,
is, yeah.
dancing in an above ground New Orleans graveyard. And okay, I'll read Death of a Newsman. And this poem, since you just published the collaborative issue, this was actually my contribution to a collaborative small crown of sonnets, a half crown,
Hmm.
that 7 women poets did back, oh God, around 2017, 18 or something like that. And my first line came from the poet before me, and my last line became the first line of the poet after me. Trying to think who was in it. Leslie Wheeler was one of them, Judith Barrington. But anyhow, I never would have come up with the first line by myself. So I'm really grateful for that. Death of a Newsman. In Memoriam, Edwin Julian Kane, 1924 to 2000. The night sky is bright with the grieving Pleiades, rising in the season, your voice was stilled at last. Though sound itself never dies, your every newscast spiraling out through space to distant galaxies. When I was little, I thought you knelt in TVs. I walked around them looking for a door and latch. Heads jerked in swordfish-netted restaurants when you asked for a menu. Women sent you cold remedies. News of the ancient gods precedes your voice through space. Bulletins about rapists and transformations. Sisters scattered to stars, riding on waves of sound. Briefly, your news of protests, assassinations. Then, in the wake of your inimitable base, towers struck and destroyed, a much-loved city drowned.
And that was Death of a Newsman, in memory of Edwin Julian Kane, from Jazz Funeral by Julie Kane, reissued just recently from Red Hand Press. And I was really interested in the overall theme of this book, because there's so much, the concept of the jazz funeral, and that, like you said, like the celebration at the end, there's so much that goes on in poetry that's like a healing process, and that kind of, funeral where you let yourself be sad and then transition. Seems like has a lot in common with what we try to do with poetry, right? Like, there's so many things that are, our griefs and our troubles and traumas and things like that we've gone through, and that we find a way. I mean, like Christine did on the opening poem, that's a potential tragedy and something really shocking, and then turning that into a deeper thought. Do you think that is the real heart of what poetry is doing? Like, is that the thing that you fell in love with poetry because it does?
Oh, yeah. Good question. I don't know why I was so drawn to it at such a young age, but I know that when I started, writing in adolescence, writing, kind of seriously, it was often because something was upsetting me that I had to kind of process in a poem. And there's something about writing a poem where I think of like an oyster with a grain of sand that's bothering it. You build those layers of pearl around it, and then the sand isn't bothering you anymore, and then you've got this beautiful thing, this created thing because of it. And I guess that's how I started out my cat with writing poems. And still, when there's some kind of terrible national tragedy, like September 11th, people at funerals, want to hear poetry. It's, it can be very comforting. A local woman, emailed me a poem that was written when her daughter died, back, many years ago, and, and told me how much it had meant to her at the time. So, I guess we go about our lives, often just, kind of coasting on, on the surface, and when something, really profound, hits us and makes us stop and grieve, that's when that need for poetry really, really raises its head, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe it goes back to that autopilot thing or NPC thing, as one of the commenters said in the chat, that, it's a time when there's so much going on that we don't have an easy way in the words that we already have to share it, or to express it. We can't just grab and piece together like it's something that ChatGPT couldn't come up with. We need something new because it's so complicated and nuanced, and then we're forced to do it. So I love that metaphor of the pearl, and the way that starts with an irritation, that piece of sand. That's really fascinating. I love that.
Yeah. I'm thinking of before Lithuania got its independence from the Soviet Union, I became friends with some poets there. And at the time, they told me that a book of poetry in Lithuania could sell 100,000 copies back then.
Mm-hmm.
And, there were only like 3 million people in Lithuania. It was about like Louisiana. But, since independence, now it's hard to even get published.
Yeah, I
But
know it's
I mean,
it's so interesting. I mean, we had Remus Uzgaris on in
mhm,
January, and we talked about that. That
mhm,
back in the '80s and '90s, there was venues. Sorry, a big loud motorcycle just drive. There are venues just for poetry. Like a performance hall. We would have for concerts, and it was just for poetry. And
yeah,
that's why it's so important and immediate. I think a lot of it has to do too with technology. Those Eastern Bloc countries ended up, the speed that they got the internet and everybody got technological and digital was much faster because it was sort of ready made. They were all lined up and everybody working
mhm,
together and so we don't have. There's so many easy things to reach for once we have
yeah,
technology, and when it's more of a
yeah,
struggle to find a place to articulate yourself, I think maybe that's when we
yeah,
need poetry more. And so when we have the internet and social media and any movie or song you want to watch at our fingertips, it becomes like we don't reach for the poems as much. Sadly, I think that's a big problem. And I
yeah,
think it's not.
yeah,
We talk a lot about it being like the Western world, but it's everywhere as we could become more technological and have more access to more variety of ways to be entertained and engaged. And so I think it's a real problem.
yeah.
Um, let's do another one of the sonnets from Jazz Funeral.
Okay. Particle physics, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. This is, they say two photons fired through a slit stay paired together to the end of time. If one is polarized to change its spin, the other does a U-turn on a dime. Although they fly apart at speeds of light and never cross each other's paths again, like us, a couple in the 70s, divorced for almost 30 years since then. Tonight, a Red Sox batter homered twice to beat the Yankees in their playoff match. And sure as I was born in Boston, when that second ball deflected off the bat, I knew your thoughts were flying back to me, though your location was a mystery.
Yeah, another great sonnet. That was particle physics, and you hear that great couplet at the end, which makes the sonnet so fun to read too. That rhyme coming through, clicking in. What do you think are the most important components of a sonnet? Like when you sit down to write one, are there certain things you're aiming for? I was thinking of
Yeah.
just now, not too long ago, there was some Twitter controversy. I don't know if that's the right word, but
Mhm.
somebody made a post about Diane Seuss's Frank sonnets. And how they're not metered. They're almost prose poem ish. They're 14 lines, but almost like prose in the length. And so, what makes them sonnets if they don't have meter and rhyme? And some of the people came back to the Volta as being what it was.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the key element? Are there certain things that
Yeah.
you shoot for as you're writing a sonnet?
I saw that, Paisley Rectal, talking about the Volta, really interesting um, contribution to it. I, I, I don't know. I love 15 line sonnets or 13 line sonnets and free verse sonnets. And, there's something about it, that relative length, the proportions of it, and something about the lyricness of it, how it stops time, how it, packs, all of time, past and present and future into that, that small space that's just very sonnet-like for me. And yeah, they turn, but Michael, I don't know if I can pronounce his last name correctly, Theune, Theune,
Hmm.
has that wonderful book, Structure and Surprise, collection of essays, which basically argues that pretty much all good poems turn, even a haiku is going to turn, if it's good. So yeah, the sonnet, good sonnets do that, but maybe other poems do too.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say something has to be transformed. It's a magic spell, and
Uh-huh.
if nothing was transformed by the end, then what would be the point of casting it? And I think that's what it's like a spell that didn't work if it's something that doesn't have any sense of turn or movement in it. Um,
Yeah.
so So writing this many sonnets in a row, did you find yourself trying to engage it at different directions? You know, were you trying to were you getting tired of the way you were going about writing them and then trying to hit from different angles or put the transitions in different places? How much play did you have within that structure?
I think I got better at them as I went along. In the last section, I think they're stronger than the first section, definitely. And I had a lot of fun with the crown too. That was new for me. I didn't really get tired of them during the writing of it, but once I'd finished, my next book was like a complete antidote to this book. I didn't send you that one, Paper Bullets. It's just like light verse, just silly, funny poems that and this book was so heavy and so emotional for me that for a while afterward I just wanted to write silly things that made me laugh.
Yeah, well, it is so important to reinvent yourself and change directions, and that's the only way you can keep growing. So it's great to shift gears like that. I should say at this point, if anybody has any questions for Julie, please leave them in the chat window. Mostly on YouTube is the one I watch. There's other places you can, but I might not see it there. So go to YouTube if you haven't. Also, please do click the like button if you haven't yet. At this point in the show, there's twice as many people watching as likes on YouTube. So make sure you click the like button if you haven't yet. It just people forget, and if I remind you, then you get then more people randomly pass on by if they have more likes. So please do that if you could. Let's do one last poem from this book, Julie.
Oh, okay. Used book. I think this is people's favorite poem of mine. It's one that I got asked to read at readings, but we'll see. I guess a lot of people have had this experience if they write. Used book. What luck! An open bookstore up ahead as rain-lashed awnings over Royal Street, and then to find the books were secondhand and one whole wall assigned to poetry. And then, as if that wasn't luck enough, to find between Jarrell and Weldon Keys the blue on cream familiar backbone of my chapbook, out of print since '83. Its cover very slightly coffee stained, but aging all in all, no worse than flesh through all those cycles of the seasons since its publication by a London press. Then, out of luck, I read the name inside, the man I thought would love me till I died.
Yeah, so heartbreaking turn, speaking of turn at the end, but definitely something we can all relate to too in the bookstore. It's just such a wonderful experience, though. I mean, I miss it so much. There's one used bookstore that I know of in all of Southern California. Katie and I drive out there occasionally. It's way out in Ojai. It's a wonderful bookstore there, but having a whole used bookstore used to be a thing. They were all over the place, and I wonder, at this point, if younger people are going to not even know what that experience is like of sort of fishing around, seeing in the marginalia written in some books, and there's just something wonderful about knowing somebody, read and noted up and, had that book for a long time and then passed it on. There's just something really connective about it among, all the things that we feel connected about in poetry too. And then, but then to have that turn at the end. It's a wonderful last line there. Is that how realistic is that experience? Is it based on something true?
It absolutely happened. I changed a couple of things in it. I moved the bookstore to Royal Street. I think it was on Charter Street, but I figured, people reading it would stumble over CHARTRES and try to pronounce it the French way, and that would really screw up the rhythm of the line. And there was something, and of course I was not between Jarrell and Keys. I was definitely, that was my wishful thinking there. I was probably between, Jones and Kramer or something. but aside from that, it really did happen. The rainstorm, the going in the bookstore, the finding of, and I told myself, I think he probably got like $1 for it because they were selling it for $2. I told myself, he had married, and I thought, well, probably he couldn't have my book in the house, with the wife there. probably, he really wanted to keep it, right?
Yeah. Well, that's probably true, actually, now that you mention that.
I heard a worse story, though. David Mason told me that he once went in a used bookstore and found a book he had signed to his mother. And there was actually a reason for it. She had loaned it to a friend. She was quite old at the time, and the friend died. And I guess whoever was in charge of the estate had given the books to a local bookstore.
Yeah, well, the poetry, magazine equivalent or editor equivalent is, a few days after the issue comes out, or the chapbook comes out, I can find it for sale at a reseller on Amazon. So I'm like, how is David Bill Gair's book? It's been out for 3 days. How is it already for sale on Amazon?
Ouch. Yeah.
And for twice as much as they could buy it here, actually. I mean, that just happened a couple of weeks ago, but like, I don't know. It is something that happens too.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So let's talk about your third book that you sent, Mothers of Ireland.
Okay.
Another wonderful book, and you're a descendant of 8 Irish immigrants, which is really interesting too. And this is a beautiful book. I'll put it on the cover on the screen of this one. It's a beautiful book.
Oh, I love
Mothers
that
of Ireland. So how did this poem come to be? I mean, we were talking about the form a lot, but the content. How did you know you wanted to write a book about your ancestors like this?
It's funny because back maybe about 12 years ago now, I started getting interested in genealogy. And before that, I had always thought that genealogy was for people who were snobs, who wanted to find out that they were descended from Mayflower, passengers or royalty or something. But Ancestry had like a free weekend where you could, look at their records without paying anything. And suddenly I thought, like, where in Ireland did my great-grandparents come from? And then it's like, what were their lives like? And like when they got here, what was it like? And what about their siblings? Did they die in the famine? Or, and it's like, I started really getting deeper and deeper into it. During the pandemic, I actually earned a certificate from Boston University. I'm a registered genealogist, for what that's worth. But just doing that research and kind of combining that with stories that I remembered, being told, by my mostly by my mother, growing up, kind of that's what that's what is kind of the basis of this book. Mm-hmm. And then also it's kind of about how the traumas that previous generations suffer somehow shape the generations after that, whether you believe, as some do, that there are actual changes to the genetic code, to DNA, mm-hmm. as a result of trauma, or whether it's just because, the emotional damage to the people who go, through it determines, how they're going to, to act toward, the children that they're raising and the people, mm-hmm. that they're around.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I mean, it's epigenetics where that happens. And where it comes through is the second generation after. Like, it's your grandparents that actually give you, and as far as studies go, better health through their own, suffering through things like the Great Depression. So it's really interesting to see that it like sort of skips a generation, but then comes up later.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, do you want to read one of the poems from this book?
Oh, okay. Anyone in particular, since?
Well, you have St. Joseph's number 2. Oh,
all right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This was a discovery made by research. Okay. St. Joseph's number 2, New Orleans. Gregory Brown died 6 September 1878, and Kate Manning Brown died 5 September 1878. Dealers are trilling their lookout alarms as I enter the city of the dead, row after row of gleaming marble tombs in the middle of a bad neighborhood. I'm looking for Kate and Gregory Brown, who died a day apart of yellow fever, vomiting blood as black as coffee grounds on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter. Gregory was 30, Kate 25. They would have been married 2 years at Christmas. No record if they left behind a child, my flesh and blood, raised by charity sisters. What drew them to this fever-ridden port, far away from any relative, doubly displaced from Galway and the north? I had the excuse of marrying a native. Foolish of me to think I'll find their names among brand temples to the Creole French. Immigrant victims were dumped in mass graves, covered with lime in shallow dirt trenches. Better get out of here before I'm robbed or find my Prius with the windshield smashed. Not even rented space in oven vaults for poor Irish victims of Yellow Jack. A pity no one searched their rented room, found an address, let distant family know. All those years believing I was far from home, so close to my great-granduncle's bones.
Yeah, another great ending to that poem. That was St. Joseph's No. 2, New Orleans, from Mothers of Ireland by Julie Kane.
Yeah.
It was interesting to read this book. I just had my own genealogy experience a little bit. My son had this fun project. They call it, what do they call it? Like family history in a suitcase, or just a suitcase project. But you had to take like little artifacts and heirlooms from your family, and then he'd give a little presentation on it for his class. And I was looking through the stuff. I don't have all that much stuff. I'm not really like a sentimental type person, you know, so I don't end up with a lot of things. I have one pocket watch, though. That was my great-great-grandfather's. And there was his photo and his name and date on the back. And so I looked it up. I Googled for the first time. Like, I don't know, when I got that and put it in the box in the drawer back there, I hadn't think about looking him up. And so I looked him up like just last week and found out that he was an editor of a newspaper. And there's this whole like obituary and stuff that you can find really easily, and it's so interesting to look back at that. Like on my other side, my grandmother was into genealogy and, you know, town historian, so I know sort of all that from her stories, that whole family tree. But the other side I knew nothing about, and it just makes me think about how important that is. So I'm wondering, did you find in your research like anybody in your background that you really identified with? You know, was there some person that like stood out that you really, you know, felt like you had something in common? And what was that experience like?
Oh God, you know, I really identified a lot with, you know, pretty much all of the women, you know, with what they went through, you know, just leaving their known world behind, you know, and coming to a new place and being poor and being, you know, looked down upon and having, you know, children, so many of them, children die in infancy, and just, you know, very much. I identified probably, not in a good way, with my great aunt Grace, who was kind of a family secret. You know, I found out, you know, kind of accidentally from my grandmother that she had a second sister. You know, I knew her sister Celia, but I didn't know about Grace, who had died, you know, in her 40s. And Grace, you know, died of alcoholism, you know, fall down the stairs. And, you know, when I kind of found out about her life, oh my God, you know, many of my poems, I'm, you know, pretty open about this now, are, you know, about recovery, you know, about drinking and recovery from alcohol. So, you know, when I look at Grace, it's kind of like, you know, there but for Grace, you know, go with I.
Yeah. Well, you have a poem here, My Great Aunt Grace. Do you want to read that next?
Yeah, okay. I'll read that.
And this is a guzzle, so another one of the many forms you're trying and playing with.
Yeah, it is. My Great Aunt Grace. Grace Ellen Glenwild, 1894 to 1941. And that Grace Ellen Glenwild. Okay. I would be lying where she lies, if not for the grace of God. That is the price for trying to drink a whole case of God. She fell down a flight of stairs and fractured her skull. Complications of alcoholism, wrote the coroner in the space of God. What shame did she bring her sisters, who would not claim the corpse? She lay in the morgue 6 months. Slow is the pace of God. When I was fat with cash, I tried to buy her a stone, forbidden in that potter's field, which is not a place of God. I stare at the wedding photo, my great aunt's little fox face radiant, as if she had just glimpsed the face of God. She married a sailor, was saved from a waitressing job, but soon it was clear he was not from a race of gods. Straighten up, or you'll end up on Dover Street. So warned the nuns of Boston, who were the chaste of God. Her last address was a cold water rooming house on Dover Street, carried out on a stretcher drunk to the disgrace of God. I carry her disease as I carry her middle name, written on paper, not stone. It cannot be effaced by God.
Yeah, great guzzle. That was My Great Aunt Grace by Julie Kane from Mothers of Ireland. What was it that got you through the alcoholism? Was it poetry? Is what I was wondering. And if Grace had poetry, do you think that she might have come through? Is that something possible?
That's a good question because her sister, my grandmother, had an 8th grade education, but was so sharp, and she used to challenge me to spelling bees, with the moderator, and beat me, and I was like the spelling bee champion of my grade school. So I imagine Grace must have had that language ability too.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really thought that. I always felt as if with poetry, as if I was my most honest on the page. That's where no matter what was going on in my life, however messed up things were, that on the page, I was telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was, not pretending. And I guess you could say, yeah, it did get me through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was there a hurdle to telling your truth on the page versus then going out and publishing it?
Oh, initially, I guess a couple of times in college, when I first, started taking poetry seriously, there were weekly readings in a little coffee house in the English building at Cornell, in a little basement coffee house. And at first I was so scared. I felt like such an imposter that during those readings, I would stand on the steps. I wouldn't dare even go in, because I wasn't sure if I belonged in there, And finally, going inside and reading for the first time and all that kind of stuff was a hurdle. But then later, during the years when I was a technical writer and editor in New Orleans, before I went back to grad school, before I said, okay, I'm going to give poetry my best shot, went back to grad school and changed careers. But I used to be kind of afraid that people would find out, the engineers would find out I was a poet and think, that I was flaky, or that, I was going to, their procedure was going to have, like similes and metaphors in it that didn't belong there, or whatever. I don't know. I guess, there are little hurdles all through life, and now,
Yeah.
Now my life is an open book.
Mm-hmm. Literally, yeah. So we'll do 2 quick questions for the audience, then we have time for one last poem. But there was somebody, I'm trying to find it, wanted to know about your, there is a sort of a casualness to the music. There's some sort of plain language that you use. You don't go over the top, and it's the language of actual speech, that you fit to music. Is that something that you're very conscious about, and why that choice?
Oh, yeah. Whoever made that observation, thank you so much, because, I really try really hard to do that. I want poetry to sound like someone really talking, in the 21st century, not like, not like, 16th century. And I also love, as you said, the music of speech. I love music. I'm not a musician. My sisters always, sang in choruses and played instruments. I have a niece who's a really successful musical composer, but somehow, it skipped me. But to me, it's like the sounds of language, or like my instrument. It's really important to me to combine those two things,
Mm-hmm.
like the best song lyrics, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's finding the music in that voice that we use already. I think is just the most beautiful way to share poems.
I love that the way you phrased that.
There's another question too from Drya Montiado. Just wants to know what other contemporary sonnetteers should we be reading, or maybe any favorite books too of sonnets. Are there anything you'd recommend that you like contemporary?
Oh gosh, well, Alicia Stallings, A.E. Stallings, always for sonnets. Kim Adnizio, First Poem for You. She's got some amazing sonnets. Jericho Brown's The Tradition is a book, informed by the sonnet. You've really got to read that. Natasha Trethewey's Native Guard, has fantastic sonnet sequence. And my student Erica Reed, who was a Rattlecast guest earlier this year, has some incredible sonnets in her debut poetry collection, Ghost Man on Second, including a crown of sonnets.
Yeah, she was the guest, I should say, about 2 months ago, maybe Rattlecast 238-ish, and so go back and look at that. But it was fun to see because you could really see your influence on her with a variety of forms that she dives into and plays with while moving through, topics of grief, even though they're, those topics, there's so much playfulness within the form and the music of that too. So it was really fun to see.
She's going to be a star. She really is.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time. Do you want to finish out with one last poem?
Okay, from Mothers of Ireland, I guess. Maybe I'll read As If, a little sonnet.
Okay, sure.
This is as if the corpse behind the crime scene tape got up and took a bow where it dropped dead. As if I got a phone call from the grave and asked its occupant to share my bed. 9 years ago, we fought and split apart with our beloved city underwater. I turned to short-term lovers in the dark. You moved in with a Southern judge's daughter. I have to pinch myself to prove you're back, though balder, 10 pounds thinner, better dressed. As if the universe had jumped a track. No hurricane, no choices second-guessed. At times, my ears pick up the strangest sound, as if the dead were clapping underground.
Another beautiful sonnet with a beautiful ending there is As If. That's from Mothers of Ireland, poems by Julie Kane, today's guest in the Rattlecast. Julie, thanks so much for being a guest. I always love talking to formal poets and getting to hear the music. It's just fun to be surrounded by that kind of the rhythms of speech and the music of language. It's just wonderful. So thanks for sharing your hour with us. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Great. Well, take care and send more soon. All right. It's Julie Kane. You can find her book and all of her books at Julie Kane Poet. That's Julie, Julie Kane, Kane, poet.com. JulieKanePoet.com. Find her books there. And now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was inspired by last week's guest, Julie Marie Wade, along with Denise Duhamel, was to find a partner and write a collaborative poem in some kind of form. Speaking of form, but that's very wide open. And, the form could have been free verse if you were being really sneaky. So whatever you want to do, as long as it's a collaborative poem and you could have had multiple partners, we'll see what everybody has coming up on the prompt lines. If you'd like to share a poem, it is still a one-page max, although, if you had multiple poems maybe from different partners, maybe we could have that too, because I think it's gonna be a shorter prompt lines maybe if we have our regular participants pairing up, as I imagine we might. But email your poem to prompt lines. That's prompt lines, all one word, at rattle.com, so I can show it on screen like I was with Julie's poems just now, and then find the Zoom link. And the Zoom link I'll paste into the chat windows on Facebook and YouTube, and join, but only if you want to share a poem. If you want to just sit back and watch and enjoy these collaborative poems, stay right wherever you are. That's the best place to view them, because then you get to see the poems as poets are reading them too. But only if you want to share a poem, join the Zoom, and I'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Sorry for, I guess my mouse is a little sticky or something. I turned up the volume instead of down for a second. But we are back with our prompt lines for the week. And we have our prompt poems editor here, Katie Dozier. Hi, Katie. How you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm doing great. I loved that interview so much, and to get to listen to all the music in those poems was very inspiring too.
Yeah, and very nice. And I get for the first time to see our new background. We have this fun flamingo lamp
Too
that
much?
you got. That is the big. I don't think so. We'll put it on screen. So this is the be the
Great.
background for when we're broadcasting from Texas.
The head of the flamingo is above the light.
That is really neat.
That's why I purchased the
I
lamp.
do like that. Well, excellent purchase. So how you doing tonight, Katie?
I am doing great, and I have to say I was very lucky with my collaboration partner this week.
Oh, who is that?
It was you. It would have been kind of
Okay.
awkward if you hadn't asked me, though. I had like prom vibes for the first time in quite a long
I think
time.
I asked you like on the show itself, so there was no no need to worry.
That was pretty smooth, you know.
That was. You couldn't say no. It was like proposing in like some big, fancy place where everyone's watching, so you can say no later.
No choice.
You're stuck.
No, you were my first pick too among many people. I
Oh,
wish I could write
thanks.
one with everybody. I mean, that would be amazing, which is apparently what Nate Jacob did this week.
That's
also.
what I heard. It's Nate.
Anyway,
It's
so.
Nate here. Yeah, Nate probably can't make it, but I do hear he combined with a lot of poets.
He did. He definitely did.
Okay, so we wrote two, and it's just fun actually. I should say, it was really fun just having a Google Doc open and sort of adding lines and picking through. And I think maybe it might help me actually. I haven't mentioned this to you, but maybe get over my feeling of like a poem is like a meditative space where I need this like, half an hour of like quietness so I can just like zone out and because it's a totally different experience adding a line at a time and then having to wait. For you to add the next line. It was really interesting experience.
Yeah, I felt the same. To me, it felt more like kind of writing haiku than like, sitting down to write a whole poem. And I have to say also, I was inspired. I wrote a collaborative poem also with Nicole Tallman, who we talked to on the Poetry Space. And I loved it because I was like, oh, we should write a collaborative poem together sometime. She's like, let's start now. Here's the first line. We're doing a sonnet, and it inspires you to just get it out there like that. And for me, as we'll see, working like through your ideas, I think sound like sonically, it's going to be very helpful for me too. And we've decided to just keep the document open.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
If you got like a few minutes and you're killing some time, might add a line if you're killing time. So,
It's like passing notes in a locker or something
Yeah,
in
it's
2024.
not bad. Yeah, the new version of that. Yeah, so it's
The new
fun. So we did two that we finished. Do you want to do the villanelle first?
Sure.
Do you have them
Let's
in
do
front of you?
that.
Oh yeah, you have the document, obviously.
Yeah, I do have the document. I came prepared to this
So
event.
how do you want to read this? Do you want me to read the first stanza?
Sure.
Okay. So this was the villanelle that we wrote, and I didn't get a chance to ask Julie about villanelles because it's an interesting, getting the refrains to do something is an interesting challenge, and I wondered how she did that, but we never got to that aspect of it. But let's do this is ours. We called it trestling, and let me see if I can. I'll try to put your face back up while you're reading. So I'm gonna do one stanza, then you do the next stanza.
Okay.
That's what we'll do. Okay, so trestling. And I think you said I left out a letter, didn't I?
I think I invented a word here. Also.
So what should it be?
It should be trestling, but I don't even know. That's like turning a verb to like to trestle. But I think I looked it up and I don't know that that's actually a word, but I don't care because it should be a word.
Okay.
So they're English
All
language.
right. Well, here you go. This is trestling.
Okay.
The only potted plant we keep alive is a braided money tree that grows so high its tissue paper leaves almost swan dive.
So when I saw you yet again mid-climb up the fragile spire of a lie, the only potted plant we keep alive
turned its face away. Before the dark time and sun, that tree would almost seem to cry its tissue paper leaves, almost swan dive.
through the years back to the root of this rhyme, and there we find it harder to deny the only potted plant we keep alive.
Even as the lines from before still chime inside, we know it by its veins and by its tissue. Paper leaves almost swan dives up from the spiral notebook of the mind.
You kept reading.
Yeah, sorry.
That becomes our sense of asking why. That only potted plant we keep alive, its tissue paper leaves, almost swan dive.
So there
Sorry,
you go.
I got locked into you reading a poem because I forgot I was also reading the poem.
Well, I was
So
trying to do our. We should have practiced with the video too, because I realized I'm like, so I had to shift that. There's a lot. Okay.
that's challenging. I'm sorry. That is a lot
That's
of
all right.
challenging.
All right, and
Yeah.
so the other one we did was a guzzle. And this one almost like related. It's called castling.
Yeah.
And so this was a different thing. I mean, both forms. I think haven't really got the villanelle down myself, individually. And I haven't really got the guzzle down myself. Those are two forms I like a lot, but I've never really written ones that I love.
Well,
So
that's how
it's
I
fun to
feel
play with
too.
these. Yeah.
And I have to give Brian O'Sullivan a shout out and say that when you were like, well, what should we do it on? I thought of it because I was thinking about his journey recently where he's over in Ireland and went there. So I feel like Brian O'Sullivan kind of prompted me this week in the
Little
turn of
hats
events.
it there. Yeah. Okay. Well, do you want
Little
to read the beginning, the first?
Okay.
Okay.
Castling. At Blarney Castle, he held my heels so I could kiss the stone we came to kiss. All love's conspiracy. It can't be kissed alone.
Hearst wanted to build something a little more comfortable, so he made a maze of black and white lines he kissed, a throne.
On the board, she set her red nails on the night, but the king fled to the edge of a safer square, their kiss postponed.
We squeeze the wet sand from our hands. It drips into spires as a pair of crabs scuttle into their new home, kiss to atone.
She hadn't known the walls would be so thick, the moat full of reptiles, the battlement strung with sun-kissed bones.
How long could we hide in the mott of our careful thoughts, turning in the turrets, the moon climbing to our kiss outshone?
He heard me singing Castle on a Cloud in the shower. The notes were knots in a rope ladder he'll find and climb, a kiss on loan.
The blocks were stacked on the hardwood floor, colors, letters, still asking for more. But the frog stayed a frog, kisses blown.
We painted the drawbridge, each oiled a chain. In the Bailey, we harvest greens by the handful, our field of kisses sown.
There you go. So that was our castling, our guzzle. So we got one for each of us.
And I have to say, you came up with like a really elaborate way for us to go about this that at first I was kind of like, come on, Green, you're making this more challenging than it needs to be. But in the end, I was very happy that you did it and it made it more fun.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, before we started. I was like, how is the best way to do it and what should we do? And, the obvious thing is to do each couplet, alternate couplets, but then that doesn't feel like we're forced to do anything weird. It's just like we're coming up with our own thing around a theme, like doing a haiku collaboration. So what instead we did, I'll put it on screen again. You did the first line, then I did the second two, and then you did the third I did the second and third, you did the fourth and fifth, I did the sixth and seventh, so that we always had to break across lines. And neither of us that way, if you're like going back and forth 2 lines at a time, but not in rhythm, then you end up having to be forced to do different guzzles. So it worked differently that way.
Yeah, it was super fun that way. And it felt like, putting a puzzle together and and then trying to edit the syntax together and make sure it all flowed. And then to be fair, there was one time where I asked you to not use a word because I really had this vision of using turrets because I'm obsessed with turrets. And Timmy said, I was like, I wanted turrets. And you kindly gave that to me.
I did too. That was what took the
Thank you
longest of the poem, because it was turrets, and then I went and I turned it to embrasures and then battlements and parapets.
And I was afraid I couldn't
battlements.
pronounce. I can't pronounce embrasures. It's just...
Yeah, I never heard that word before. It was just on Wikipedia.
Yeah, but it was very nice of you to make that change. And yeah, I thought it was amazingly fun, and it did feel different. You're right, and it is really fun to have a document open and then open it and see another line from Tim Green of a poem.
Aw, well, from Katie Dozier. But it's such a different experience for me, at least, from writing how it usually feels. It's like almost like a totally different thing, than writing. So it's I think good as an exercise, if nothing else, but we'll see what comes of it. Having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see who paired up and everything. I mean, all the faces I can see on the Zoom here, like we're going to be in for some really good poems, I think,
We
tonight.
are, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and so you don't have to do it like we were doing it, and we have obviously apparently didn't rehearse that at all ahead of time, but I did flip back and forth. But if you do have your partner here, feel free to both unmute at the same time. I guess that's how we'll do it. If your partner's not here, feel free to read the whole poem. If you want to go, go back and forth. I think with the Zoom, it's actually much easier to go back and forth because the Zoom takes care of the camera and not me. But anyway, let's see what we have, and keep yourself on mute until it's your turn. We're gonna go in the order that people are here. And first up, let's go to Amy Small McKinney. That's a very familiar name at first time on the Rattlecast. Hi, Amy.
Yes. Hi, Tim. I'm here because of Dick. Dick
Ah.
Westheimer invited me to collaborate with him, and it turned out to be a pretty miraculous experience.
Well, that is so fun. And it's really funny, too, that you paired with Dick because we always give him a hard time because he's always the first person in line. on the,
Oh, no.
so his partner is right up there, too, beating him, no less. So,
Yeah.
so what did you guys do? And Dick, you feel free to come on, too.
Yeah,
Um,
please, Dick.
yeah. So a mutual friend of ours, when I told her that we were collaborating, said, "Oh, a lyric poet and a narrative poet walk into a bar." And I actually picked. I love Amy's work, but it's lyric, and it is much different than mine. And I just thought, how can I stretch as far as I can? And I reached out to Amy, and she said yes right away without really knowing what she was getting into.
Mhm.
And what we did was we each brought lines from discarded poems to the table, and then we picked one, and that was going to be our opening line of the poem. And we didn't know the form, but what we knew was that it was going to be a lot of pushing and pulling because, I write these rangy lines and narrative threads to it. And Amy's like, no way. And we kept this feedback loop going, and we ended up with something that has a touch of narration to it and a touch of lyricism. And we started writing couplet by couplet. But what we found is that we would just keep going and massaging each other's couplets until I don't know whose words are whose in each of them. But we did a lot over Zoom, a lot over email, and I can't thank you, Katie, enough for prompting the experience to do this because I think we've got a project going
I
and
think we
we don't
have. I think
we don't know each other except we've met on a workshop very
one.
awkwardly once. So this isn't a friendship. This didn't start as a friendship. It started as I like her poetry, so I reached out and asked her.
Mhm.
So it turned out to be a guzzle. And anything else, Amy, before we read it?
No, it's just something I think we may be trying this again. I think Dick has helped me stretch a little bit, and here when the narrative, it really works. It's just something I love others' narrative poetry. It's not my voice, but I'm starting to see how we can integrate narrative and lyrics more than I think I realized or felt capable of. So I am grateful you reached out to me. It was so much fun.
So we're going to read every other couplet, but there's no ascription to who wrote the couplet. But just you'll have to take my word for it. These are all mashups.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. I have it up for everybody. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Whoever starts.
Dick, why don't you start with the title?
Okay. We are what we listen for.
I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her real name was Grief. C.S. Lewis.
The air sings a murderous tune, heard only by cats and crows.
As the cat wanders away, the air chants to the last crow.
In the garden, the corn sprouts is picked clean by a romance of crows.
What garden is this, filled with dying roses and crows?
Fists and curses feed those who misconstrue the crows.
The corvus carries a note from the grave, a message well known to crows.
There are 3 ways to avoid the cat's claws. The first is to learn to love the call of crows.
Next, to listen to the air rain on the garden, lifting the wings of crows.
Last, the roses remind us of sorrow, how Amy and Dick relearn the language of crows.
Oh, that was just beautiful. That was Amy Small McKinney and Dick Westheimer with "We Are What We Listen For," and that is already the dream. We were hoping that, like, there'd be a longer term project that people were going to pick up and make a longtime friends and poetry collaborators, and it's great to hear that already.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Tim and Katie, for giving us the excuse to get together.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, definitely. And Amy, it's great to have you on. I hope you share poems on the prompt lines in the future too.
I hope to. Thank you so much.
Great.
Maybe we'll share another prompt poem we collaborate on.
Well, that'd be
Who knows?
great too.
Dick pulled me out of my shyness container, so we'll see.
Well, there's definitely no need for that. You're great, Amy. It's great to have you on. Thanks. Yeah, that was Dick Westheimer and Amy Small McKinney once again with "We Are What We Listen For."
That was so good. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt and just say how much I love this already. Like,
I know, it really
I feel
was.
fulfilled. That was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. All right, next in line, let's go to Carla Schwartz and see who Carla worked with.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Carla. Yeah, great to see you.
I'm happy to be here. This was also for me. Thank you, Katie. An amazing event. So I asked Clayton Clark if she would collaborate with me, and we didn't know where to start. We thought, okay, let's see, maybe we could do a guzzle. We have to come up with those two. I can't pronounce those words. The one that really rhymes with everything, and then the last word. And so let's just throw around some lines and figure out what the first line is and so forth, right? And then but we quickly realized that that's a really hard task. I don't think Dick and Amy actually had that part of it, where they rhyme. And so we went to the next thing, which we said, okay, let's make it a sonnet. But then we started writing, and we had this idea of what to write about, which you'll hear about in the poem. And so it ended up being a one-sentence poem. That's what this is. It's a one-sentence poem, and it's not short, but it's definitely under a page. Mm-hmm. And we loved this experience. You can't say whose words are what. It's definitely a mash as well.
Oh, very cool.
So this is called Foreshadowing the Skies, and there's an epigraph, which is: first I missed the full eclipse, then I missed the northern lights. With my luck, I'll probably miss the apocalypse. Mark Osto, Instagram. We could have seen, if we were willing to open the door, birds of paradise pointing the way, heard tree frogs singing from cavities, followed the Andromeda scent. So much hope in night for day, in dreams that roll beneath the threat of clouds, ears abuzz with all the hype. Just wait for it to go quiet, while gray bands block the path between us and moon, a path we might never see, though most days we welcome the cumulus, their beauty, their shade. This day, while totality parties in awe applaud the sun, we feel like we've lost the crown. And even when Aurora, goddess of dawn, announced a second chance to join the world of oohs and ahs, we raced to the river, raced to the deck, stood open-mouthed, hooked like trout, sought desperately the touted shimmer of colors, squinted to make out faint pink streaks, but learned that camera sees more than eye. With something lost in space and time, never having learned how to look, how to see, while a moment slips, then flees as the sky undoes.
Yeah, beautiful poem, Carla. So what was it that you loved, about working together? Was there an aspect of it that you appreciated especially?
So what I used Google Docs, which I don't usually use for this, and actually Clayton wasn't that familiar, but I opened up this one document that we were able to share, which is, she's in California, I'm on the East Coast, and so that was really cool. And I liked sometimes we just threw out a bunch of lines, and then one of us would look at them and say, oh yes, this works, blah. And so it really felt like it was something we did together, and it wasn't just alone. And I felt that there was, normally when I write a poem, it might take just at least the first draft will come out all at once, and this wasn't the case. And so that dragging over time actually made it for me more exciting, that we kept thinking about it.
Yeah, well, very cool. Really well said, too. Yeah, the dragging it out is an interesting aspect of it, too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, too, I feel like I can hear you and Clayton being very familiar with both of your poetry in there, and that the one sentence poem really makes a lot of sense. You often write poems that have like a long line, and Clayton has as well. So I think that was a really smart way for you guys to go.
Thank you. It was fantastic.
Yeah, well, excellent. Well, that was Carla Schwartz and Clayton Clark with Foreshadowing the Skies. All right, and next up, let's go. We have Hamid Malak.
Hi.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm with Siobhan. So Siobhan's here. Yep.
Yeah, and Siobhan too. Siobhan Brownlee. Hey, Siobhan.
We teamed up together.
Ah, excellent. Yeah, that's great. And so from France to is it Australia or New Zealand?
Australia.
We teamed up because I originally come from Australia, so and New Zealand, so that's why we teamed up.
Oh, well, excellent. Yeah, well, that's such a great pairing. And so, how did you approach the collaboration?
Well, I think that
Siobhan started. Yes.
Yeah, I was the one who started. Hamid asked me, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, maybe this is a way of getting to know each other. That writing a poem together is," and so we do have sort of autobiographical stuff coming out in a very poetic way, which is quite fascinating. Rather than having your boring conversation, how many children do you have? It comes out in a very poetic way. We did have one, we thought that we might be able to do more than one page because there were two of us.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, that's why me and Katie,
possible?
we had definitely 2 pages is fine for this one. I should have said that at the top of the hour. Okay. Yeah, so it's 2 people, one poem, 1 page per poet. So,
okay, good.
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah.
It's 1.5 pages. But because I'm the person who started off, it's like a little prose bit. We did it in prose bit, like a call and response, but I'd call it small sort of prose poem bits. I call them pieces.
Yes.
Very cool. And how did you decide what to write about, what to start with?
With me, I started, I was fascinated by Hamid's hair. And I think it's the most beautiful hair. And I was thinking, why do I think it's so beautiful? Because when I was a child, I had a picture book of Greek goddesses who had that hair. And that's
so I spent most of this poem Googling Greek mythology because it turned into so I could understand what we were talking about. But it was just brilliant. Really has been brilliant.
Okay, well, that's it. I don't know how you want to read, but go ahead.
Yes, well, so we each did separate pieces. So I did a small piece, then Hamid did hers, then I did mine. So we'll just do it in that order then.
Yeah, sounds good.
So it's called Uncloaked. Was it Athene or Persephone who had long black curly hair in my picture book, became the glory of feminine beauty? How I would like to be that little girl again when all was possible and reach through the screen to touch your curls.
Hieroglyphs etch these curls, yet your hand is here, reaching through time, through space, to touch these spiraled walls. My hand travels from tomorrow to open the curtains in your room, so you might peer through and see your son walk the same land I do.
It's true, I've been swept along by Aeolus's winds and lured by Europa's lotus fruit, 20 years away from my birth region, but I still feel the warm touch of the South Pacific Sea on my skin, and now through the open curtain I glimpse dark filial eyes.
They reflect the sea, so you may feel its warmth again. Your skin has roamed this earth and still recalls these waves, the same waves my parents saw from their window as the giant bird laid us in our new nest half a century ago.
On each island that our ship moors to inhabits a winged siren, a one-eyed giant, a cannibal, a sorceress with spells, a six-headed monster, a jealous nymph, a kind soul, a benevolent prophet from the underworld, or a sun god. How have you known these beings, my friend?
Water sister, my demons transformed to angels when I turned to gaze at them. Soured love cured my body to walk alone. My babes grew, one a three-eyed giant, his mouth caught in an oyster's shell, and a feisty nymph with a quick tongue. What creatures have you met?
I have met two beasts called loneliness and frustration, but also a sprite called love. She is capricious. After 10 years of yearning to return to patient cloth-weaving Penelope and young Telemachus, once reunited, Odysseus left them yet again. Are we destined to never be satisfied?
I say satisfaction will come when the cloth is tossed in the fire of neglect. Shall we sit for decades faithful to a shadow? Let us stand and each walk towards our sun, not a hair turning to glance back at the flames.
Now I know that it is Athene whose lustrous black locks flow in the childhood picture book. Slaying my doubts and dithering, Egyptian Athene, helmet-bearing goddess of wisdom, warfare, and arts, you have relayed your strength to me through this poetry.
Penelope, indeed, uncloaked now at our table of gods, I see you, Clotho. I am honored in your presence. You, the chooser of destiny, the weaver of life and letters. Without you, no fate, no poetry. Let's raise our goblets, dear one, to immortality.
So we both became Greek goddesses by the end.
Oh, that was really
so
fun. Moving
brilliant.
through all of those, all that history and the two voices. Oh, that was really great. Thanks so much for sharing that. And again, so great to have, new friendship blossoming too through this prompt. Yeah, thanks, Katie, to do that.
Really is. I was really excited when one of you tweeted and I saw that you were going to be doing the collaboration. And I have to say, I would never know, even though you did it in the column response format, which implies, two people, I never would have thought that was written by two poets. You guys really found the third voice between you. So that was wonderful. And I learned a lot too, because I do not know Greek mythology, although I do know Hamad has amazing hair. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. Yeah, that was wonderful. That was Siobhan Brownlee and Hamet Malak with Uncloaked.
Thank you, Hamat. Thank you.
Thanks, Siobhan.
All right, and then let's see. Next, we have Zachary Honeycutt.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Katie.
Hey, Zachary. How you doing?
I am doing great. I think we should all do a 50-page poem. I will contribute 45 out of the 50 pages.
I think we're going to keep it to one still, Zach. But what do you got for us this week? Who'd you team up with?
So I teamed up with the wonderful haiku queen, Sharon Ferrante. But I'm going to read for Sharon because Sharon's feeling a little ill tonight. I hope she feels better soon.
Oh, yeah, me too, definitely.
So yeah, so I did a high bin with Sharon Ferrante.
Oh, that's a great use, of your verboseness and her brevity. It's a perfect combination.
Yeah. Sharon was amazing. She was so cool to work with, so professional. I was like, I have this really, really interesting off the wall idea, Sharon, and I think that your wonderfully creative haiku would complement it so well. So I just approached her and I said, "Can you read my stuff and see what you could come up with?" And literally within a couple hours, she had brainstormed four really, really creative haiku. And then we ended up picking this one, but it was really fun to work with her. She totally got where I was coming from. So this is called Cold-Blooded. The sandhill cranes decided to move from the swamp to the suburbs. I think it was because they hated paying the rent, which has risen higher than the king tide in Florida on a chilly autumn day, with their landlords running no less cold. Their landlords have owned the place for almost 50 years and sneak up on the long-legged tenants who so quietly tread through the soupy, solemn estate, and at times resemble a living question mark with a bloated dot supported by shoddy, pencil-thin stilts and a Martian's primordial toes at the base. How did they even reach the front of my lawn on those things? I've been privy of past rental disputes where the property holder appealed to the office of a small claims court, but digesting their kids? That's a little cold-blooded. They squawked to me about the big, toothy, ovular smiles that always seemed to adorn their landlords' leathery mouths before and as and after they ate the kids. As if I had the guts to do something about it. I told them they could stay, as long as they pulled down the lever to flush the toilet with their beaks. They can leave the seat cover up since I'm a bachelor. But when I'm sipping my morning coffee, and sometimes afternoon, and sometimes evening coffee, don't look at me with those tiny little tiger-colored eyes like you can't believe I'm not sharing. I lived with an osprey with a caffeine addiction before I moved to North Florida, and he broke my favorite coffee mug because he didn't grip it with his talons. Then he left a huge ring on the counter after he dipped his fish in my Arabian blend. Anyway, I threw him out because he took a dump in my sink. But man, did he make a great shot of espresso. Last deposit, still picking the bones from my teeth.
Wow, that is great. So much fun. And, Zachary in Zachary style and adding Sharon Ferrante to that. What a great combination. Great idea, Zach.
Yeah, thank you guys.
I love that. I'm really curious, Zachary, are you going to switch places with Sharon? And Sharon's going to be coming trying to eke in 3 pages into a 1-page poem next week, and you're going to be writing haiku and charitas.
We'll have to see. That would be quite the challenge. I'm up for it. I'm up for anything. Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, very fun. Thanks so much for sharing that, Zach.
Thank you, guys. Great night. See you guys next week.
Yeah, Sharon too. That was Sharon Ferrante and Zach Honeycutt with Cold-Blooded. And next, Bijwajit Mishra. Hey, Biz.
Hey, Tim. Good evening. How are you?
Good. So who did you pair up with?
I paired up with Billy Melville. We tried 2 like with the kids, but they're busy. It's not ready. It's still on the way. I might submit, but Billy was good. He raised to the occasion. He rose to the occasion and he did it. I think he should have joined it.
Is he here?
Hey, Billy,
I'm here, Biz.
Oh, he's here.
I'm here.
Okay.
There he is. Yeah, good to see you again, Billy. So Billy came on maybe 6 months ago to read one of your poems. I remember that too, Biz.
Yeah.
That's right. So we wrote kind of a renge, which I'm not so good at, and Billy had never written it, but it was fun. So it was really fun, and we wrote about a subject which we had a shared experience of.
Mhm.
So that probably made it probably helped. So can we start reading?
And Biz gave it to me.
That's great. And then if you're only listening, but Billy's got the aurora behind him as well, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's actually out camping. So
Yeah, wow.
I'm happy that he was able to make it.
Wow, you can make it from the wilderness. That's amazing, Billy.
Well, yeah, we had to pull a few tricks here. We're so far back in the bush, we got to come out just to hunt. But anyway.
Oh wow. Well, thanks for joining. Yeah. So let's hear this poem. Go ahead. However you want to read it.
So Billy, I'm reading my part. Like the title has like there's a italicized part that you can read.
Mm-hmm.
So Aurora Borealis, a chronology in reverse. Forest fire after the grandstand, hiding the lights.
Curtain comes down on a spectacular show.
A village fair, car lights hitting the face.
Faint lights reveal their colors. An umbrella.
The horizon blinking, a city's wakeful night.
Neon paints on a black canvas. I count my stars.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. That was Billy Melville and Bishwajit Mishra. And I love, the haiku world is so full of collaboration. I'm glad we got a few of those in. And then writing about a shared experience is really great too. So this was the Aurora, of course, from last week that you both got to see being up north. Yeah, really fun. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Good night, Tim. Good night, Katie. Good night, everybody. I'm going to be back on YouTube.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much, and happy camping too, Billy.
Thank you.
Yep, take care. Yeah, once again, that was Bishwajit Mishra and Billy Melville with Aurora Borealis, a chronology in reverse. Interesting sequence there. And next, let's go to Nancy Tennell.
Hi.
Hey, Nancy.
Thanks to Katie again for this wonderful prompt. I partnered with Nate Jacob, who cannot be here this evening, but Dick said that he would read Nate's part.
Ah, okay. Well, that's great. I was wondering why Dick was sticking around when he could have been on the YouTube. There you go.
I appreciate that, Dick. If I posted on the Facebook page a question about particular forms that would lend themselves to collaboration, and Jimmy Pappas suggested the Samanka. And so
well, I've never heard of this before. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, I will. It's the poem consists of 2 tankas, and the tanka is the 5-line stanza that goes, the syllables are 5, 7, 5, 7, 7. And so I wrote the first tanka of each Samanka. Isn't this sounding musical already?
It is. It definitely is.
And then Nate wrote the second.
Ah, well, that's great.
And the Samanka generally deals with topics like love, spirituality, nature. And so we've got 5 of them, but they go quickly. And we tried to cover most of those categories.
Oh, great. Yeah, go ahead.
Nate's is the second tanka in each poem, so that's what Dick will be reading. And by the way, Dick, Nate, when I told Nate that you were willing to do this, he said, "Oh, I always wanted to hear Dick read my poetry." This is what I know. What once was love is fading, sinking like the sun as it releases the day to become a dawn elsewhere.
Mark this end of night across morning's bending sky. I've waited enough to hold you against the light, know you through and through.
And the second, darkness shrouds the house. Fear of nighttime noise haunts me. The cricket's grick, the barred owl's stuttering hoot, each rustle in the bushes.
Summer leaves hide me below your window, waiting, light casts darkness out, and you look down, discover my eyes in your reflection.
Wild honeysuckle and all the blue-eyed Marys, dog hobble, bloodroot, saplings growing in stages. Oh, consider the lilies.
If God's eyes open to fields of gold, red, blues, I'd follow his gaze, preferring you to flowers, preferring you to flowers.
I saved my sorrows for tomorrow, but they came against my wishes, and you were taken from me. I dream now of yesterday.
Tomorrow keeps on forever moving away. I still see you reach into the depths of dreamlands, into all I've saved for you.
Mercy's breath, ruah, scent of grace, communion wine, fire of the spirit, water's generosity. I look to the ancient paths.
Strike up the band, Lord. I will cross the fields of coals to be where you are. Make my paths cool, straight, and fast. Let me dance in your presence.
Oh, well, that was just wonderful. And thanks for the assist in the reading, Dick. But I love that.
Thanks, Dick. Thank you.
Oh, I loved reading that with you. That was wonderful.
Yeah, we really felt good about what we created, and we really didn't know each other than through this Rattlecast on Monday nights, and it just ended up being a marvelous experience.
Oh, well, that's just so wonderful to hear. So did you go back and forth over email? Is that how it was?
We did. We had to email back and forth, and so we made edits back and forth and changed things in each other's Tonka, and then sent notes to one another.
Yeah, I mean, you can hear that third voice emerging feeling too. I mean, I've never heard Nate write that way before.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
I think he truly made all of them love poems.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Really well done. So thanks again, Dick, for reading.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a really lovely collaboration. And again, more of a collaboration because of Dick Westheimer's reading too. Now we need to hear Nate Jacob read your poem. But thanks for that. That was really wonderful.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks so much again. That was Nancy Tennell and Nate Jacob with 5 Samanka, and also a form I never heard before, so I get to learn something too. That's always great. All right, next in line is Mike Bales.
Hello, this is a challenge. I wish I would have looked harder when you wanted submissions for the tribute to collaboration. I tried, like the person does readings for me and he's busy, and I gave up. This time I had to keep trying. I ended up writing 4 pieces. I can read 2 of them if that's okay. With my longtime friend from the Rockford Writers Guild, Cindy Guntherman.
Oh,
she
great.
got right back to me. Before I'd send something to her, then before I close the email, there was a response. We edited each other a little bit, which is good. And I hope we still kept our voices. The first one I sent you, the second one I didn't.
Okay.
This is called Lake Superior North Shore. My cousin and I stand and watch restless seagulls circle the sky. They call out, they cry, they jostle each other and land on the waters as waves crash on the rocks. I watch them grab morsels from the water and fly. I watch as their frail wings carry them toward the horizon where they disappear. The only sounds are the wind and the waves. I look to the place where the waters touch the clouds and sky, as if this is the place where the world ends. Explorers have lost their lives while exploring these waters. While my parents are in the cabin, my cousin and I stand alone. None of us speak, fearing to ruin this moment. Circling seagulls, what they want to say, only the wind knows.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love that combination of the two. So what was your process like, Mike?
Now I'm going to give away who wrote what.
Okay.
I came up with the title. I was going to alternate more, but I guess I wanted to come up with the title, give it a frame, what I kind of wanted. Then she said, let's write a haibun. She said, you do the prose. I mean, Rockford Review is where most of my published short stories are published. And she edits them because uh, she's not the editor, but she's like a proofreader for the Rockford Review. Then she said, let's come up with the haibun. You do the prose, I'll do the haiku. So she's prompt and great to work for. I wish I would have thought of something like this before.
Yeah, well, yeah, really fun. I'm so glad you got to do that. And it's always great to see two people we know getting together on a project. So you had another one too?
Yeah. I didn't send it to you. I didn't know we could read more than one. Obviously, I gave away who did what. I was going to have someone guess who is me and who is Cindy, but I gave that away. It's Standing in the Forest. It's Friday, the last day of a work week. A wall of clouds churns in the sky to the west as I drive to the forest. I hope that it'll rain soon, so work will be canceled and I can go home early and see my friends. Just off the highway, the forest surrounds a county road. The forest spreads across the north part of the state. I want to go home, yet in the forest I find my sense of peace. A cold breeze rustles a canopy as I stand along the side of the road, a two-lane as it circles through an enclave. While waiting for the crew to set up to bury power lines, I'm looking upward to see the soft glow of the sun through the clouds. Moments later, lightning ripples the sky. Work proceeds at a leisurely pace as the lead cars through the work zone. I open the window and hear the rain patter leaves. After 3 hours, the work is called, but I linger in the forest a moment longer before going home. After directing traffic, leaves whisper, stay.
Oh, that's beautiful too. Yeah, wonderful combination. You two work great together, Mike.
Yeah, I'm collaborating with someone local, Tuesday, who used to be one of the greats and kind of backed away. And he's always wanted to do stuff with me. So I'm collaborating with him, I guess, or two, maybe where we can mix lines and see if voices merge, like become another, like people here have talked about.
Yeah.
I guess it can happen. It has.
Yeah, well, definitely. Very cool. I hope you do, Mike. It's always great to hear that, and glad you got together with Cindy.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was two from Cindy Guntherman and Mike Bales, Lake Superior, North Shore. All right, and Audrey Friedman is next.
Hi, Tim. Hi,
Hey,
Katie.
Audrey. Yeah, good to see you again. It's been a bit.
Yeah, I don't know if things have
Yeah.
been lots of company.
So who'd you work with on this?
Okay, so I didn't. I'm a bit behind. And this one was the golden haiku
okay.
exercise. So I decided about 3 minutes ago to cut a word, and I think less is more. So you're going to see that there is one word that is intentionally unsaid. The thief left it behind, the moon at my window. Sciku Ryokan, 1758 to 1831, translated by Stephen Mitchell. The moon lurks behind gauze drapes as white swords slash thieves at the window.
Ah, that's great. Yeah, a great edit too, Audrey, and really great pair of poems.
Well, I thank you for that.
And in a way, a collaboration too. You know, you're working. How is that different from the tanka going back and forth? You just went back and forth across 200 years.
I found that I was speaking in response to his poem. It was more than just borrowing words. And it was totally subconscious.
Yeah, I love that haiku. I really love that prompt, the golden haiku prompt, because we got to hear some great haiku, and that's a beautiful one.
And the weather here has been so violent. We had terrible thunderstorms today. And
where is it that you are, Audrey? I can't remember actually.
South Carolina,
Gotcha,
near
okay.
near Hilton Head, and all these terrible weather alerts are going on, and obviously, the big booms and crashes and flashes got me writing this poem.
Definitely. Well, that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So it was Audrey Friedman, once again, with that haiku, The Moon Lurks Behind. And next, let's go to Jayanthi Rangan.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Katie.
Yeah, great to see you.
Good to see you. This one was such a fun thing.
Oh, that's great.
I ended up doing 2 collaborations.
Oh, that's wonderful.
One was with Sharon, and one was with Nate Jacob. And unfortunately, both of them, they cannot be here.
Well, that is very suspicious. Where are they?
I know. Sharon is, she's a little unwell, and Nate has some family thing going on.
Yeah.
I like the theory. Let's pretend that they're actually just collaborating on poems.
I know.
Like for the 5 minutes nobody's asking them to. They're doing it, the two of them. That's my vision. Even though I know, Gianni, you're completely right. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. So, do you want me to read both of them back to back?
No, whatever you want to do. Well, talk about them each. So I have Sharon's up first. Do you want to explain what you did with that together?
Okay. So Sharon and myself, we did a hibern. It was more like I wrote the prose, and I said, Sharon, you want to do the haiku part of it, and so it worked out that way. So here we go. Yeah. I'm reading I'm reading the first part. Yeah.
Okay.
The sight of a pooping dog triggers a revolutionary research. Here's a typo. It's not evolutionary, but revolutionary research. Ancient fossil samples were our only resources for knowing the past, the world of mastodons and dinos, pines and ferns. Scientists wanted to look back further in time, crossing the barrier of 1,000,000 years, the furthest one could look back with DNA readings. But of course, going back beyond that era was impossible because DNA degrades over time and breaks down into small bits. A long strand of 100 base pair sequence was needed to match up with the chronicled records for comparison. The project grew weak with its life's leak. This far and no further, a laughter rang out in the lab. Not so fast, said a scientist who looked in awe as a dog pooped in the pouring rain. So the dog DNA in the dog poop goes into a dog puddle and into the earth. He reasoned DNA must be in every soil, and if it was preserved by cold temperatures, voila, we would have buried secrets. He dug in frozen Greenland dirt. The samples held the DNA, but small, damaged, and crumbled. No way could it restore a past so far removed. Failure upon failure piled up like a deck of cards, and the limitation of reading these tiny bits of junk in the soil became a waste of science. Meanwhile, a shotgun technique, which was never used with dirt DNA, was suggested as a last resort. Yes, this suggestion was a northern light for the dark skies. The technique required a shorter barcode reading, only 30 base pairs long. This collaboration worked. The shotgun technique and the dog poop inspiration. We can now read a DNA piece 2.5 million years old. One step forward, the the ancestral smear. One step forward, the ancestral smear.
Oh, that's just wonderful. Great story to that, and great combination too with the haiku. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that, Janthi.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and then you
Oh,
had another one too. That was Sharon
yeah.
Ferrante, I should say again.
Yeah, I'll read that in a second. How do I go from? Okay. Um, okay, so this is a collaboration with Nate. He suggested tanka. And I had no idea what a tanka was, so I looked up the form and I gave it a try. So I sent him 3 tankas, and Nate, he responded to each tanka. So it's mine, then his, then mine, then his, and so on. Should I?
Well,
Can
do you want me to read
join?
his?
Oh, that would be so nice.
Okay, well, I'll read his then.
Okay.
Okay.
So first, I'll read mine and then you read his.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Courtship rituals, romantic stallion nuzzles, but a mare stands still. Omniscient AI mulls a neighing relationship.
Search it up. I'll wait. ChatGPT assures me stallions don't get laid. If the mare would have her say, and the mare has her say, nay.
An exercise freak, a foal walks soon after birth, a total health nut. He chooses a no-fat diet of low-calorie grass greens.
You've seen my descent from fit and fine to flabby. I don't like salad, nor especially walking. And trotting, don't even start.
Okay. Total horse bone count. Oddly, 205. Humans win by 1. And even 206.
Yet horses gallop ahead.
Oh, yet horses gallop ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was this page got cut off.
Oh,
Yeah.
no problem. Okay, so here's Nate again. I'd have 1 by 2 were it not for Eden's Eve, formed from my thieved rib. For sure, speed was in that bone. Makes my Eve so hard to catch. Yeah, so that was really fun. Really fun. Light Tanka by Janthi Rangan and Nate Jacob. And I got to learn a lot about horses in the process. Thanks for sharing those.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so once again, that was Nate Jacob and Janthi Rangan with the Tanka series. And also the site of a dog pooping triggers in evolutionary research along with Sharon Ferrante. So very fun, very informative too. I'm very edified and educated. So thanks for sharing those. All right,
Thanks,
and next,
Didi, for the prompt.
yeah, thanks, Janthi. And next, let's go to Angela Yuriko Smith. Angela, I can't hear. It's unmuted, but your microphone's not on or picking up. So it's not the Zoom. The mic might be out of batteries or might need to be switched on. Yeah, we can't hear. Maybe. No, we can't. Yeah, it might be like out of batteries or off. Well, we'll swing back to you in a second. Okay. Let's go to Jacob Pearson then, and hopefully Jacob's not Angela's partner because that would be trouble. Hey, Jacob.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So is Angela your partner?
No, actually, my partner was an old classmate of mine. Her name is McKinley Montague, and I trained her to take care of our university's botanical garden
Oh,
that
very
she
cool.
does.
And she does poetry and botanical stuff too? Botany? I
No,
guess?
actually, so I did pest control there, and we have a pest control book, and she saw that I had scribbled a poem a really bad one, a really bad poem in the margins of one of the record pages, and she's like, "What's this?" And I couldn't catch it in time. So I was like, "Okay, well, there's someone who has a kinship with me in the sense that they know that I write poetry, and they read a really bad one. So heck, you can only go upwards from rock bottom."
Well, that's great.
And so I was like, "Hey, you want to do a collaborative poem?" I was thinking of a couple haikus. You write a haiku and I'll respond with one.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Yeah, totally." And so since we're both from Idaho, and that's in like the Yellowstone area, I was very happy to find that she wrote about nature. And she, the title of the poem is called Glacier Lily.
I'm not seeing the poem this time. Jacob, did you send it to me?
Ooh. Awkward. Let me see.
Yeah, well, we can just listen
wow.
to it too.
Yeah. We could just listen to it. It's 2 haikus, and yeah, it's called Glacier Lily.
Glacier Lily. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. A little yellow star dancing in the woodland meadow, peaceful, tranquil, home. Thieves buzz through the stalks, casing the next snack, one flower away. Bumblegum. So.
Bumblegum. Well, that's a great ending. Yeah, very cool. Thanks so much for sharing that, and great story too.
yeah, of course. Thank you.
Yeah,
so have
awesome.
a good day.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was Jacob Pearson, and who was the other poet, Jacob?
McKinley Montague.
McKinley Montague. Yeah, well, thanks to her too. Thanks for sharing those. All right, and now let's see if Angela's back.
All right, can you hear me
There,
now?
we can hear you. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it must have been something where the batteries or something. Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, I was actually trying a new headset, so apparently, no, that's not going to work.
I guess not. Well, we have you now. Thanks so much for joining. Is it your
Yeah,
first time sharing
absolutely.
a poem on the open lines?
It is. I've been kind of stalking you guys for a while and being
Aw.
really nervous to actually come in here and read a poem. And then with the collaboration, a friend of mine, and we've promised to write a golden shovel forever.
Aw.
So, and I thought she was going to be in here, and she is not. It's Amy Zollers McNally.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I was like, okay, finally, I will write that golden shovel with you. So then, of course, I didn't really know what a golden shovel was, and I had to look it up and all that stuff. But I like what we did.
Oh, very fun. Okay, well, here, go ahead. I have it up whenever you want. Start reading.
Okay. All right. It is the poem that we used was On Death by John Keats, and the line is, "Can death be sleep when life is but a dream, and scenes of bliss pass as a phantom by?" And she wrote the first paragraph, or not paragraph, but section, and then I wrote the second one. So this is Amy's. Breath of a graveyard moon can sing fog-draped aria to death, whose surface is towering and shroud to be your guest, your haunter as you sleep. No greater peril yours than when you rest, your caution dormant. Life is but a breath. Your soul is mist. Your soul is smoke, a mist. Candle shudder, but hold your light. Death perches, a gagging sentry, gorged douser of dream. I don't know if you can hear the chihuahua going crazy under my desk suddenly, but I
Yeah, they
apologize.
do a good job of cutting it out.
Yeah,
on
good.
the Zoom, yeah.
And then my section was, but without dreams, there is no waking, and life cannot be. The scenes that we pin our hopes and joy of living would be tasteless bliss if all things kept eternal. Past the light and welcome shadows as everlasting dawn would a nuisance be. Come, phantom, that I may live. Do not pass me by. So that I may live, do not pass me by.
Oh, yeah, that was wonderful. Great golden shovel. And so if you don't know the form, the golden shovel takes that quote. Can death be sleep when life is but a dream and scenes of bliss pass as a phantom by? And those are the last words of each line in the poem. And then splitting that in half. Great combination. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for doing this. This has been a really, really neat project. And listening to all the poetry has been like poet romance.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, I'm glad to see it and glad to have you on, Angela. I've seen your name, all over places. It's good to see your face too.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm gonna get Amy on here next time too. Be like, come on, it's super fun over here.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. Thanks.
Also, a good time to mention, Angela, if you're on Facebook, we'd love to have you in the Prompt Lines group so we can
I
continue
just
the
joined.
poet romance. Oh, yay. Okay, great. That's wonderful. And thanks for coming, and I hope you come back too.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for doing this, because there's just not a lot of people that want to talk about poetry. So thank you, guys.
We're all right here, at least.
We are, yeah. Well, thanks so much, Angela. Yeah, so that was Angela Yuriko Smith with Amy Zoller's McAnally with Inspired by On Death by John Keats. A really cool golden shovel there. A really fun form. One of the newest forms maybe ever invented. So a couple poets are left here. Laura Berg is next.
Hello.
Hi, Laura. Good to see you.
This has been really fun.
Yeah, it
Here's
definitely has.
this is actually a picture of the puppy from our garden.
Aw.
So my husband, I persuaded him to sit with me in front of the puppy and do a ghazal with me, a ghazal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. We
great.
did our best here. Let me just pull it up. Okay. So there's some okay, so Puppy Ghazal by Laura and Kareem. So violacious stamens circle like bullfight crowds, penitents, dark-coated men reaching toward the holy pistol of Poppy. All this shed emotion, tantrums, furies, solar flares seethe into auroras of heart-stopping radiance, soul of a poppy. Could it be possible for a human, asleep or awake, to grow such petals, frail skin wrapped in a blazing stole of poppy? Earth, bleeding itself, gives rise to this crimson, inspires even lungless bees to breathe, orbiting their idol, a poppy. When night throws her fur cape over the thrum of our city, the only light still ashine will be this one enthralling poppy. We'll land on its stigma, spell, inscribe our butterfly dreams, repeating and by repeating consoling, poppy, poppy, poppy. The horizon can shun us, the moon can fly away, yet we, the lovers, will remain wild, shaggy, and holy poppies. Painting together, the brush our rudder, we'll sail a streak of garnet to discover our beginning and end are a poppy. We, Kareem and Laura, flare and rest, rest and flare, eager to perceive, depict, and ever extol together these poppies.
Oh, that's a very sweet ghazal. Thanks so much for sharing that, Laura.
Kareem does some, the horizon can shun us, the moon can fly away, yet we, the lovers, will remain. And he does the blood of the earth and the inspiring the bees to breathe. And so it was, he sat in front of the puppy and made lines, and then I put it together.
Oh, yeah, that really is so sweet.
That's it. It's so wonderful. And I'm so glad that you had the picture, because now we get to really picture that. So do you think you'll write more poems with your husband?
Yeah, I think we're going to do some more flowers together through the garden season. Yeah, we really had fun. It was a great idea, Katie. It was a great inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that beautiful poem. And yeah. And then I think once it's not the flowering season, you'll find other things to write about too, I suspect.
Yeah, that was really wonderful. Yeah. It was Laura Berg and Kareem with a poppy guzzle. And let's see, Danica Dinsmore is next up. Hey, Danica.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. How you doing?
I was so into the prompt lines readings that I forgot I had a big pot of soup cooking on the stove. And I ran out to check it, and it went all over the counters and down the floor. But that's how good everyone is. I was so mesmerized.
Well, that's great, but I hope it's not too much to clean up.
So I was alone caring for my elderly mother all weekend, so I thought I'll do a collaboration with her. She has dementia and she says really odd things, but it just turned into a poem about not being able to communicate. So it didn't quite work. So I took what I had and I used it to finish an old assignment that I hadn't finished, which was the prose poem based on the haiku. So once again, I am doubling up because I can't keep.
Well, that's all right. We appreciate it.
This is the third time, so it's a thing now, I guess, me doubling up. So I don't know if you have that one. Is this golden? I guess it's a golden prose haiku poem or golden haiku prose.
Yep, I have it right here. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. It's untitled as of yet. Life's little, our heads sad, redeemed and wasting clay, this chance be of use. Ravi Shankar. This morning, I can't understand your little mumblings, me, the best interpreter of your voice. Never heard your slight speech impediment growing up, every new friend whispering, I can't understand your mom. Even now, dentures boxed away for good and talking nonsense, I still interpret for friends, caregivers, hospice workers, your words. Who are you? You're so polite. Let's go to the top of the hill. I need to get up so I can sing. It's the past sad years redeemed, the witnessing of your wasting away, shared meals, days, hours, even a bed, knowing your cadence, your humor, your every routine, your favorite dishes, your fear of chance, of not being of use, of being alone without me. But this morning it sounds like you're speaking in tongues. The only word I understand is no when I ask if you're hungry. It's the first time in memory you've ever dismissed the first meal of the day. Even now your breakfast has become lunch, has become dinner, as a night's sleep grows longer and deep. They say life's outside turns in, that the soul's solitary time begins. Last night you called my name at 2 a.m. and I lay in bed waiting to see if it was a dream, hallucination, or sudden lucidity. Then I hear you talking low, even laughing. Oh, I see. Who could it be? Maybe it's that Karen you've mentioned several times, a mystery guest I've not identified. Even Mom's best friend since high school has no idea who Karen could be. I decide she must be your guardian angel or one of the unemployed, the ones in your hair, the ones I called upon the night Aloha Angel Transport brought you home when I stood bleary-eyed, ripped diaper in hand, overwhelmed. I touch heads, whisper I love you in your ear. You still smell like Mom, even though the clay of you less and less disappears. It's 12:30, Mom. Are you hungry? No, dear.
Well, it's a very touching, heartbreaking poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Danica. And I'm so
Thank
glad you have
you very
poetry
much.
too to help you through this time. Yeah.
I am grateful too.
Yeah.
That was
Thank you.
really beautiful, Donica.
Oh, thank you.
And I am sorry about the soup. I feel guilty. I wish I could make you soup to make up for it.
Maybe someday we
It's
can
the
have a
thought that
big
counts.
soup dinner.
Yeah, we'll make you soup one day.
Thanks. We'll all contribute. It'll be collaborative soup.
Yes, yes.
All right, well, take care.
Bye.
Bye. It
Thank
was
you.
Danica Dinsmore with the Golden Haiku Prose poem. No title yet. Let's see. Jared Campbell is next. Hey, Jared, are you there?
Yep. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, great to see you.
Good to see you.
Well, I don't actually see you. If you want to
Yep,
turn your...
there
There
we
you go.
go.
Now I see you.
Hi. Yep. So I was also together with Nate Jacob.
Ah, yeah. And Nate really gets around. It's
Yeah,
impressive.
he was very generous with us.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. So I'm gonna follow it's kind of a haibun thing. I'm gonna follow the convention of reading each of the haiku twice. Yeah. The crunch of driveway under tires after a long day. The kitchen faucet dripping. The crunch of driveway under tires after a long day. The kitchen faucet dripping. In matters of making sense, the sky had clearly fallen asleep, leaving those who sought signs with suddenly downcast eyes and a rising sense that this was a time to be busy. It was as if it had snowed in June, the world within view frozen solid, everything echoing its shock, everything echoing everything else, slow as not to break apart. Warm drinks late, windows open to the stars not sleeping. Warm drinks late, windows open to the stars, not sleeping. Lying awake, watching the ceiling, gradations emerged from the darkness. Forms without substance arose and disappeared. From time to time they seemed to echo one another, but the patterns disintegrated and sleep did not come. I rose, put on a robe and slippers, and carefully walked downstairs and out of the house. I felt the shock of the night air. The Big Dipper shivering in a vast darkness. I've locked myself outside. The Big Dipper, shivering in a vast darkness, I've locked myself outside.
Yeah, very cool. And it is nice. And with the Haibun, hearing those two haiku twice, those haiku really come to life with that. Thanks for sharing that. So what was your process like with Nate?
So I sent off the opening haiku. Then he produced the haibun that responded to it, and then I did the haibun after that.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Jared.
All right, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, it was Jared Campbell with Nate Jacob with a haibun collab. And last but not least, on the Zoom is Monica Dobos for the first time in a bit.
Well, hello, everyone.
This is...
No, Nate Jacob could not be here physically, but he's here in spirit and beard.
Oh my gosh. So for those just listening, we have a full Nate Jacob.
This is Nate Jacob. I just see Nate Jacob. His background is a little cooler than normal, perhaps.
That is true.
But other than that, I mean, I don't see anything different.
Yeah, so Jacob and I wrote a haibun because we both dislike, well, maybe that's too much to say, but we're not pros at formal poetry, and we felt like, yes, haibun is easier to write, and we ended up writing each one line. It was a very illuminating process. I think I found out so much about myself that I'm a free control, for instance. And then it takes so much patience, I don't know, inspiration too, to like go off whatever the person said before, so very interesting. Tim, would you like to read one line?
Sure. So what do I read though?
So you can start and I'll read the next. And so
a
on.
Sentence or
Yeah, a sentence.
Okay. Okay. So Ursa Minor. Here, let me put it on the screen though. Okay. Ursa Minor. We still miss the baby deep down in our bones.
The ghost-like silence in the trees kept us posted at our bedroom window those winter mornings.
You saw the bear first and lured it in.
Everything can be replaced, you'd said.
I emptied the run-down armchair of board books and invited the bear to have a seat.
He refused the porridge, too hot, and the honey, too cliché, but gulped down the funnel cake and the beer.
You removed his bib, wiped his chin with a golden silk hanky. You tried to convince yourself and me that this could work, that a bear could fit into that space.
I hid my tears in a slice of cake.
Waiting for the sun so long.
Yep, that was it.
Well, that is so great, and I love that the appearance, Nate.
I love everything about the last 3 minutes. It's amazing. I mean, that is committing with the beard, That makes me kind of want to dress up like someone else I know that has a beard.
I've long wanted to grow a beard, and this was my perfect opportunity.
Yes, this was.
Nate's efforts too. So.
It was brilliant, and I'm so glad to see you back on the prompt lines too. We've definitely missed you.
Me too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great prompt. I loved it.
Oh, good.
That's great. Well, thanks. Yeah, great to see you. There's Monica Dobos and Nate Jacob with Ursa Minor. And that is it for the Zoom. Let me see if there's we have another Nate Jacob collab. Can you believe this? How busy was Nate this week?
I warned you. I was like, we should call the Nate Jacob line.
another. This is Chelsea McClellan with a Nate Jacob Hyben. It's having storm and internet issues there, unfortunately. So hopefully that's all right. A lot of storms, because of the space weather. But so the abridgment, and this is I don't have any details about who wrote what. Let's see. But again, this is Nate Jacob collaborating, this time with Chelsea McClellan. So here we go. Abridgment. The willow reaches for water, far from home. That's the haiku. The willow reaches for water, far from home. Nice monoku. Time never slowed for anyone, never acknowledged even once that no one was keeping pace. People climbed mountains, lived more and more above the clouds, certain that time slowed at the ends of the wheels spinning through space. Airlines flew higher, charged more, and provided better drinks to those willing to pay for slower seconds, higher flights, and longer days. Time allowed it, but looked upon the very human pursuit of time extension as nothing more than moths chasing the shimmer of a full moon reflected in a deep summer pond. The days seemed longer, the pursuit seemed worthy, the number of barely longer days each would live grew by precisely none. And the moths still ended their pursuit floating in the netted light of the moon until some early fish closed the circle, completing the eternal turn of the wheel, marking endings and beginnings, and endings beginnings. A spider falls, each leg stretched far on the web. So very cool. And that was Abridgment by Chelsea McClellan and Nate Jacobs. Great use of all of those Hyben techniques, too, in that one. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that, both of you. And let's see. And Ted Guevara's got one for us. Let's see. This poem may irritate you, he says, but it's one with real begging. It's about my cousin Dan, who refuses to go where the rest of us have gone. And we have, there's a picture of a door. It looks like the front door of a house. And the sign above it says leave. So that's interesting. This is a collaboration with Redundant Dan. I can't rightly say that you have failed to launch. I can't rightly say that you have failed to launch. All that crown thy good with brotherhood, all that crown my good with brotherhood, is a paper plane you rather than a 747. Is a paper plane to you rather than a 747. Your sisters have tried so hard to put you on board. Your sisters have tried so hard to put you on board. To you, there is earnest and lively roots at home, still. To you, there is earnest and lively roots at home, still. I used to feel that way, and my feeling was stretched. I used to feel that way, and my feeling was stretched. Oh well, what will be, will be. Can you say anything remotely different? Que sera, sera. Can't you say anything remotely different? So that is great. One of those, I don't know if Dan's his brother, but I imagine Dan is Ted's brother, repeating every word he says to be really annoying. I think that was it. Thanks for sharing that, Ted. That's always fun to read. And now that's going to wrap up the prompt lines for tonight. Let's switch over really quick and do the Sciku. And the Sciku this week was based on this story right here. It was, and this is surprising to me. You learn something every day, but I never even occurred to me that, here, first warm-blooded dinosaurs may have emerged 180 million years ago. So this is from University College London news, okay? So first warm-blooded dinosaurs may have emerged 180 million years ago. The ability to regulate body temperature, a trait all mammals and birds have today, may have evolved among some dinosaurs early in the Jurassic period, about 180 million years ago, suggests a new study led by UCL and University of Vigo researchers. And what they did is they looked at the migration patterns based on the fossil record and realized that the dinosaurs of certain species were migrating up into colder climates, including the old T-Rex too. So the more bird-like dinosaurs basically were actually warm-blooded, it seems, like birds are, but that long ago. And we think of these as like, when I was a kid, they were the terror reptiles or whatever. It turns out they're actually a lot more like birds, and a lot of them are warm-blooded, at least in the Jurassic. So we're going to have to update Jurassic Park for one thing. So that was the inspiring. And then, this is a retirement kind of town that I live in here in Wrightwood. And so it made me think of all the people coming back to play pickleball after a long winter as well. So we combined those two in my head for some reason. And the haiku is this. It's a 4-line haiku. Warm-blooded dinosaurs migrating snowbirds. So warm-blooded dinosaurs migrating snowbirds. That is your Sciku for this week. That is the show for this week. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. So much fun in the collaborations. Wasn't it, Katie? Did it live up to your hopes and dreams?
Oh, it was so great. I wish we could have been sitting by each other for this episode in particular because
me
it was
too.
it was very heartwarming. And yeah, I love that. I was really hoping everyone would use it as an excuse to, be more connected and, forge even greater friendships in our community and then reach outside and bring people in. And that's exactly what happened. And the poems were amazing too. So Man, I also want to just do this every week, but I don't think we can do the same prompt every week, or else I wouldn't be doing that much. So
that's true. It wouldn't be a prompt anymore.
No, it wouldn't be a prompt anymore.
So what is the prompt for next week? Do you remember what it is? Do you have it written down?
I don't have it written down.
Okay, so the prompt for next week is right
but
here.
But you do, because now we've taken to where I tell it to you over the phone.
Yep.
Somewhere. Next week, I'll send you a telegram. The prompt of the week. Stop.
They'll knock on the door at the end of the show.
The telegram.
All right. So the prompt for this week is this. Write a poem using regular meter of some kind that references your ancestral home. So a great prompt, inspired by Julie Kane, who has that wonderful book, Mothers of Ireland, and also uses a lot of forms and meter. And so we're going to focus on the meter this time. It doesn't really have to be anything except for a regular meter. So why did you want to do the meter aspect of it, Katie?
I wanted to do it because us doing the villanelle that we did, is an iambic pentameter. And it made me realize that I don't push myself to write in meter as much as I would like to. And I thought that with us looking at some kind of a form for the last week, that would be kind of a bridge into this jumping off point to then attempt something, in that way ourselves this week. And then the ancestral home, there's been so much talk about Ireland lately. It's not my ancestral home, but I'm very interested to explore that. And I also secretly want to learn more about everybody through them talking about their ancestral home too. So that's the
really
sneak.
Fun. So what does an ancestral home really mean? Can you define that?
It can mean what it means to you. So for me, looking at my roots, I could go to Daniel Boone because I had ancestors that were with Daniel Boone, or I could go back and go, to England, or a lot of, so you can go back as far as you want, whatever you consider it to be. So we'll see. I think you're going to have to ask your son, since he's the one that knows more about your ancestors.
He knows all about it now.
Than you do now.
Get him to bring a suitcase and give a little report before.
Yeah, I think we need the suitcase.
We definitely do. Well, I need my pocket watch back anyway.
Yeah,
that's a story for another day. Anyway, thanks, Katie. It's always so much fun working with you, doing stuff together. Speaking of collaborations and great prompts and everything.
Thank you. I'm going to assume that during the course of the show, you've already added the next line for our next collaborative poem in our Google Doc while you were doing.
That's because I was not paying attention to all the wonderful poems. No, that is not true. I did not do it next. And actually, you have to come up with the next subject.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's your turn. Anyway.
It is my turn. Thank you. Well, thanks so much. It was great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, this is Katie Dozier, our prompt poems editor, of course. And next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Nancy Miller Gomez. So Nancy was the guest exactly 100 episodes before on Rattlecast 147 2 years ago. At that point, she was our Rattle Chat Book series publication with her book Punishment, about teaching poetry in prisons. She has her first full-length book out, Inconsolable Objects. She's just a wonderful poet. She's one of those poets that you kind of had to twist her arm to actually publish books, but knowing that she had this whole trove of amazing poems that she wasn't really publishing because she's such a perfectionist. But now she finally has this book from Yes Yes Books, Inconsolable Objects. That's going to be Nancy Miller Gomez with a full-length book, plus your prompt poems to write a poem using regular meter of some kind that references your ancestral home. So it's going to be a really fun episode next week, Rattlecast 247, Sunday, May 26th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great weekend or week in the meantime, and I'll talk to you later. Good night.